The main character longed with all his heart to continue living, clinging to every opportunity to escape the clutches of fate. Now he was in a sterile white hospital room, where doctors with serious faces announced that his illness was so rare that it had never been seen before in the history of medicine. Now his name would be forever recorded in medical archives, becoming synonymous with this mysterious and unexplored disease. The doctors told him the bitter truth with sincere regret, explaining that his life was almost over. There was no hope in their voices as they delivered the verdict, a maximum of 6 months to live. And with these words, they literally knocked the ground from under his feet. Leaving the hospital walls behind, he wandered the streets of the city like a ghost, oblivious to the cars, people, and hustle and bustle around him. He couldn't comprehend that all this was happening to him, as if someone's cruel joke had turned into reality. After all, he had always worked tirelessly like a worker ant, believing that his efforts would lead to well-deserved peace of mind. After going through many trials, he had finally achieved stability, but now his life was coming to an end, like a broken string. Crossing the pedestrian crossing, he suddenly felt someone push him roughly, shouting a warning about the danger. But, completely immersed in his thoughts, he paid no attention and simply fell from the accidental touch, like a fragile doll. A single thought spun in his head: how unfair it was when a death sentence came unexpectedly, without the right to appeal. It was especially painful to realize this at the moment when luck finally smiled on him, because just a few days ago he had won the best lottery of his life. He desperately wanted to live, striving with all his heart to seize every day, because leaving this world was not part of his plans at all. With tears in his eyes, he silently begged fate for mercy, ready to be happy in any circumstances, just to be allowed to stay in this world. However, even despite this desperate desire, he did not want to cling to life if it turned into endless agony. In the end, his existence came to an end, only to begin anew. Now he had taken on a new form, reincarnated as a skeleton that did not even have the ability to perform normal human functions. Now he found himself in a dark and alien world, where greedy monsters eager to tear him apart attacked him from all sides. But in this new body, he had gained such incredible strength that he could easily tear any enemy to shreds, wielding his weapon with astonishing accuracy. Even though piles of defeated monsters already lay before him, someone else was still breathing in the darkness, lying in wait for their chance. A giant stood before him, whose silhouette alone would have frozen an ordinary person with terror. But the hero did not even flinch, only assessing how to quickly finish off this enemy. Without wasting any time, he pushed off powerfully from the ground, soaring upward like a shadow ready to deliver a deadly blow. There was no fear in his mind, only the joyful thought that the end of this mad journey was near. However, in order to truly put an end to it, he had to eliminate this last obstacle. Without hesitation, he finished what he had started, sending the monster's head flying with one swift blow. The realization that this was the last enemy in his path brought him a rare sense of relief. Now, all preparations were complete, and the oppression of the rebels had finally reached its climax. After reincarnation, fate had brought him to the very bottom of the demonic hierarchy. He had become nothing more than a pitiful skeleton. However, this was only the beginning, and gradually climbing the ladder of power, he became the king of the undead, a lich capable of raising even the most desperate demon criminals from oblivion. At times, he wondered if he had now become completely bald, but as the king of demons, such trifles no longer mattered to him. His new subordinates chanted the name of their ruler, extolling his cunning and treachery, but they constantly called him Isaac. This annoyed the hero to the core, because his name was Isaac, and he was tired of explaining to these dimwits that they needed to say it correctly. These idiots couldn't even pronounce his name properly, but something else was more important. They asked him where he was going, and he replied without a shadow of a doubt that he was going to receive his well-deserved reward. Now he wanted only one thing: to finally eat some food, even the most disgusting kind, and, damn it, to be able to use the toilet again like a normal person. Soon he set foot on the sacred ground of the Divine Kingdom, where his main goal was to be fulfilled. Without further ado, he announced to those present that he had destroyed all the enemies who stood in their way, and now, according to the agreement, they were obliged to return his human form to him. In response, his interlocutor merely raised his eyebrows in amazement, asking if he had really finished off everyone, since it was supposed to take at least 500 years. Somewhere nearby, a girl was whispering to someone, discussing how all the high-ranking nobles were now forced to work for him for free, and then Isaac remarked irritably that he could hear every word they were saying. He didn't understand why everyone was stalling for time, because it had been agreed from the outset that if he fulfilled his part of the bargain, he would be made human immediately. Instead, they suddenly asked him a new question. Would he agree to do one more small job? Even as a skeleton, he could clearly see that these tricksters would never stop, and perhaps it was time to show them who was really in charge. His patience snapped, and he shouted furiously, demanding an explanation as to why the hell they were trying to make him their slave, because even if they were gods, it wouldn't be so easy to deal with him. The colossal aura of the demonic lord began to vibrate in the air, and he coldly remarked that surely these self-confident celestials dared to force him to work, knowing how to restore his human form. One of the girls sighed guiltily and admitted that he seemed to have guessed, and the self-proclaimed god only asked her irritably if they hadn't decided from the beginning that it wasn't worth messing with such a savage. Isaac smirked and, staring at them, asked if that was all they could say, because, apart from forbidden summoning techniques, they were incapable of either creating or destroying, and he, after all, was not a living being, but an undead. If they couldn't even turn him into a human who could theoretically threaten their divine kingdom, then their situation was pretty bad. Those with whom he had signed a contract began to wriggle out of it, begging him to give them a little more time, assuring him that if he completed a few more tasks, everything would work out. But Isaac didn't even listen, smiling predatorily and announcing that for violating the contract, he would take their lives. Now their only fate was to become skeletons like him. Those present shuddered, sensing his immense power and realizing that this demon was capable of reducing them to dust with a single wave of his hand. He just smiled, launching his attack and unleashing his destructive power. But suddenly, something went wrong. His power began to rapidly disappear, like sand through his fingers. Completely bewildered, he tried to move, but found that he could not even move a finger, demanding an explanation as to why his magic had disappeared, and why his body no longer obeyed him. God, looking at the helpless demon with a cold smile, replied indifferently that it was not even worth trying to resist. Anyone whose name is written on his lists loses the ability to move. This technique is called destruction eradication, an ancient divine ability once used to seal away catastrophes like him. The Celestials were genuinely perplexed as to how a lowly demon dared to raise his hand against them, for he should have been grateful to them for even having the chance to serve their will, and now he faced the fate of an insignificant insect. Isaac, through clenched teeth, sarcastically asked why an insect, and whether a fluffy caterpillar would not be better, but in response, he heard only a mocking "stupid demon," followed by a grim comment that he still seemed obsessed with questions about hair. At that moment, he felt a strange, inexplicable tremor in what remained of his strength. He couldn't quite understand what was happening, but, frowning, he declared that these heavenly fools had no idea what they were getting themselves into. If these deities had planned this from the beginning, then why did they waste time? Because he would rather turn himself to dust than allow himself to be turned into an insignificant insect. Those who witnessed what was happening realized his intention to destroy himself and rushed to stop him, but it was too late. The main character had no intention of stopping, his body trembling with unbearable tension, and a wave of destructive energy began to pulsate around him. In an instant, there was a deafening explosion, whose destructive force spread for hundreds of meters, turning everything around into ashes. The deities, of course, survived the catastrophe, but looking at the chaos around them, they spoke with mockery and concern about whether he was really so insane as to wipe himself off the face of the earth. One of them noticed a tiny beetle, exclaimed with joy, and was assured that the ritual had been successful. His companion, observing the result with cold certainty, confirmed that the seal had been applied correctly, and that the soul of the Demon King was now securely locked away. With the disappearance of the Lord of Darkness, their powers were supposed to return, for whenever he disappears, the deities regain their lost power. But even this was no cause for joy, for no one knew when the world would be shaken by a new catastrophe. Their plan was simple: to create the perfect vessel for the saint in the human world, and destroy all demons once and for all. One of the deities asked his companion if he was too exhausted after performing the ritual, but the other waved it off carelessly and said that the most important thing now was to find a soul for the saint to incarnate. At that moment, his fingers closed on the body of a beetle, which he recognized without a shadow of a doubt as the captured Demon King. Now this unfortunate creature would be eternally imprisoned in the form of a pitiful insect until he realized the futility of his existence. The first thing the main character saw after the flash was endless darkness, and in this darkness his thoughts raced chaotically, realizing that he had been tricked and deprived of everything. Perhaps he had become stupider because his mind was now trapped in a skeleton's body, although he had no particular desire to think about it, especially when a dazzling light flashed before his eyes. No sooner had he thought that he no longer had arms than he saw two small palms, like those of a baby, and was surprised to feel the softness of the skin, the warmth, and the beating of life inside this body. It was unthinkable, but it seemed that he had returned to human form. What a vile game had been played by those who hated him most in the world, for surely they had made a mistake when sealing him away. His train of thought was interrupted by a gentle female hand lightly touching his face, and then a girl leaning over him called him a saint and joyfully announced that he had finally awakened. Judging by her clothes and manners, she was a maid, and the man standing next to her remarked with a slight smile that it would have been much better if he had slept longer. Isaac was confused, wondering who these people were, nurses or executioners, and whether he had truly become human again. Suddenly, the expressions on their faces changed, and with a sigh of feigned regret, they declared that, although it was unfortunate, their duty came first, which meant that even though the saint had just awakened, his time had already run out. With impassive resignation, they informed him that he would have to fall asleep again, but this time forever. At that moment, he noticed one of his hands clutching a small bottle containing a strange green liquid that glowed ominously. There was something frighteningly absurd about the realization that he had just been killed, then reborn, and now they wanted to send him back to the other world again. The man wasted no time, sharply bringing the ill-fated bottle to his lips, determined to do his job. However, Isaac struggled with all his might, jerking his head from side to side, just to avoid touching the suspicious substance. The man holding him frowned and asked with genuine horror why he refused to drink, but Isaac couldn't believe that this guy was serious. He had just acquired a human body, and now he was expected to voluntarily swallow something suspicious. He had been given clear instructions to behave properly, open his mouth, and accept his fate meekly, but that option did not suit him at all. However, what shocked him most was not that, but the fact that the stranger called him Isaac. The idea that he was being addressed as King Isaac seemed like a ridiculous mistake, because his real name was Isaac, and that couldn't be a coincidence. Obviously, when the deities performed the exorcism ritual, someone made a trivial mistake in spelling the name. Now everything fell into place. The seal had not worked, and instead of disappearing, he had been reborn in the body of his namesake. It turned out that these self-confident divine fools had ruined everything because of one tiny typo. While he was trying to make sense of what had happened, they mercilessly shoved the bottle into his mouth. Summoning all his strength, he resisted desperately, clenching his lips, until the man, growing increasingly irritated, called for help from his accomplice, unable to understand where the baby got so much strength. However, as soon as a drop of liquid touched his tongue, he realized that it was just vegetable juice, albeit so disgusting that it resembled garbage from the kitchen table. He had not yet had time to get used to his new body, but he already felt a sinister premonition awakening within him. At that moment, in the heart of the Holy Empire of Hela, within the walls of the Central Eastern Temple, they were preparing to receive important news. The Holy Father walked slowly through the temple, anticipating the moment when he would be told that the boy had finally left this world. Suddenly, another man appeared in the bishop's path and smiled as he announced that he had good news worthy of the Lord's ears. It was none other than the Emperor of the Holy Empire of Helen himself, Alexander Heathcliff Hela, a majestic figure whose presence caused those around him to freeze in reverential awe. The representatives of the church, not daring to show disrespect, bowed before him, greeting the one they called the shining sun of the empire. However, Alexander, who did not tolerate empty flattery, immediately asked a direct question. What was the bishop doing here, and why were such important matters being decided without him? The old man, putting on a submissive expression, replied that Joshua's family had come to greet the candidate for sainthood, for the Holy See was extremely concerned about his fate. The emperor nodded, instantly grasping the essence of what was happening, and calmly said that if it was a matter concerning a saint, he himself must personally verify that everything was in order. After all, if the saint was left in the care of the papal throne, and something suddenly happened to him, the consequences would be far from rosy. His interlocutor, pretending to be puzzled, was about to reply, but at that moment a loud, piercing scream rang out, causing everyone to prick up their ears. The scouts immediately reported that the scream was coming from the room where the candidate for sainthood was staying, and the bishop, unable to hide his delight, just smiled crookedly. However, Alexander did not waste any time. Rushing into the room, he demanded to know where the boy was. A maid stood in his way and stammered that she was not screaming because of distress, but because of delight. Her eyes shone with delight as she asked everyone in a trembling voice to pay attention to this little angel. He was eating so well. Beaming with pride, she pointed to the empty bottles, stating that the baby had already drained 15 servings of vegetable juice, which shocked the bishop. He simply could not believe what was happening, how the boy was still alive after such a monstrous dose. After all, if anyone knew the true nature of this juice, it was him, and a barely noticeable flicker of concern passed through his eyes. Just a few minutes ago, Isaac had felt something sinister slowly entering his body, but he did not give in to panic. And then, a moment later, he realized that the feeling was familiar to him. Sviatogub was a deadly poison that mercilessly destroyed the holy energy in the bodies of servants, acting gradually but surely, and inevitably leading to death if the dose was exceeded. However, the boy only smiled, realizing that he could turn this poison to his advantage by transforming it into the purest demonic mana. Just imagine, without knowing it, they had literally recharged him, the Lord of Demons, with such powerful energy for free. Well, since they were so generous, let them bring more. He would drink every last drop. After drinking the contents of one bottle, the boy screamed, trying to get them to bring him another bottle, and the man asked if he really wanted more. This pleased him, and he said that he would gladly give it to the child. The more he drank, the better, because the poison, or rather the vegetable juice, would not work immediately. Isaac, in turn, was just happy. He didn't know who was giving him this mana, but he was a good man. Then it became clear that all he had to do was leave his consciousness and enter his subconscious. And there he would need to find the deepest point, that is, the world of the beginning. This place is called the source of the core. Having penetrated there, the main character was glad that he was completely safe here. Inside, it became clear that now he needed to concentrate. He was going to collect the transformed mana and place it in the core. He wanted to cast a spell, but without it, it would be a small contribution to the future. However, while doing so, he saw a magical explosion. Although it soon became unclear what this mana core was, because it should be three-colored. But to his surprise, he sees that it is completely white. But in principle, to hell with it. He hadn't even gathered mana normally, although it was surprising where all this energy came from. It still far exceeded his expectations. It's very interesting how much blessing they crammed into this little body. If he works hard at it, he could become a much more terrifying monster than he could ever imagine. Looking at his new name, Isaac, the boy chose survival. The boy decided to survive because it was his deepest desire, burned deep into his soul. This was the beginning of what eventually became the King of Skeletons, and with its help, he was able to create unique skills and enhancements. And in the end, the main character was even able to bring them into this body with him. While he was in his subconscious, the people who were trying to kill him wondered if he was dead and needed to check. Suddenly, the boy raised his hand, and the man was shocked that he was still alive. The boy began to mumble something, but since he was a child, nothing was understandable. And he, in turn, wanted to be with you, so they brought him another bottle. A stronger one. In reality, when the Emperor knocked on his door, he was glad that nothing had happened. Isaac thought that this was really an attempt on his life, but otherwise everything was fine. His attention was also drawn to a strange old man who was staring at him. It became a little scary. Perhaps he had eaten too much of the so-called poison, and he realized that it was still too early to give himself away, so he wanted to pretend to be a fool and smile. The bishop couldn't believe his eyes, wondering what was wrong with him. After all, from what he had drunk, he should already be writhing in convulsions and spitting blood. But it turned out that the child was just laughing at him, and this made the old man angrier and angrier. A couple of days ago, the central papacy announced that the one who became a saint would rule the empire. The man said that now everyone was trying to convince him that his child was a saint, even the lower nobility. The bishop asked the gentleman not to worry, as all other contenders for the role had been eliminated. The interlocutor noted that this was natural, but at the same time, there were bad rumors. And the talk is that there is a contender in the Yeshua family. This family is the emperor's right hand, and the bishop noted that unfortunately, nothing could be done about them. But the gentleman said that by the time his interlocutor arrived, he would already be dead. His role would simply be to confirm his death, and he had already taken care of the rest. The saint in this empire must be a boy from the Barrett family, said the patriarch of the House of Barrett and Cardinal Hire Barrett. Recalling this conversation, the bishop remembered that the cardinal had said that the child would be dead. So he did not understand why he, who was more alive than anyone else, could not be that child. At that moment, the emperor approached the boy's crib, and he was curious. He has sparkling silver hair, and isn't that the hair color of the founder of the Holy Empire? The bishop couldn't understand how my lord could say such a thing. The main character realized that this man was the emperor. Alexander noticed that he could say more that he was closer to God than the current pope, as expected of the last contender for the role of saint. When Isaac heard this, he couldn't believe his ears. What kind of pretender was he? The bishop pretended that the emperor was becoming more and more like him, saying that this could not continue. So he asked His Highness to let him take care of the baby, and the man asked suspiciously why he should do that. The old man said that something was wrong, that a newborn couldn't produce so much juice, but the emperor didn't understand what the problem was. The candidate for sainthood drank the clergy's beverages. The boy was called the Demon King, who had become a candidate for sainthood, and it was unclear how this had happened. The bishop continued to say that it would be better to make sure that everything was in order, so let His Highness allow him to do so. But the emperor refused again, saying that he would wait for the man from the house of Yeshua. Before you could speak, undigested dark mother spewed from the boy's mouth. He became alert, wondering if anyone had noticed him. The bishop immediately turned to his lordship, saying that he had just sensed dark energy coming from the baby. This was surprising, and no less suspicious in relation to him. The hero couldn't believe that the scoundrel had understood everything. The old man said it was quite possible that he possessed mana, and that was unacceptable, so he would contact the Inquisitor immediately. The emperor asked how he could say such things about the president. Then the representative of the church asked him not to worry, as the Pope had already found a candidate from the House of Barrett. Alexander was amazed that this man did not even hide the fact that they were representatives of his own family. The boy, in turn, understood why they wanted to get rid of him. The bishop picked him up and said that the Inquisitor had been summoned immediately. The emperor ordered him to stop immediately. The House of Yeshua is close to the imperial palace, and as the current emperor, he strongly insists on treating the child with care. The interlocutor said that he understood, my lord, but His Highness had recently said otherwise, that the crown prince should only be blessed after the saint had been determined. Alexander understood that if he did not support the child chosen by the Pope, the crown prince would remain without a blessing. Therefore, he asked whether this was indeed the will of the papacy. Isaac understood that there could be trouble if they did not understand who he was. The bishop said that they could verify everything that had happened now. He would do this with the help of exorcism, and while he was saying this, the boy grabbed the bottle. The old man continued, saying that if he was human, nothing would happen to him. But if he was a demon, everything would become clear. At that very moment, the main characters hit him very hard with that very bottle. So hard that blood gushed from his mouth and his teeth began to fall out. The hero smiled as if he were a baby and thought he was just playing the role of a child. The bishop couldn't believe what had happened, because the blow from the bottle was too strong. Those present said that the light he was emitting was divine, and that the child was definitely a saint. The boy thought that it was definitely not her, but that it was power. And to reinforce the result, he swung again. He hit the old man who was holding him just as hard, only on the other side of his face. But that was not all, because he continued to do so several more times. In the process, the bishop realized that it was dark mana. The emperor and those present were only happy and thought that the child was radiating divine light. Isaac decided to just cast a spell, strengthen the bottle, and continue to pretend to be an innocent child. I wonder how that scoundrel who tried to accuse him of something feels now. Someone noticed that the bishop was struck by his divinity. The boy didn't understand what it was, but every time he used dark mana, divine mana came out with it. They are literally two opposites. It must be impossible to use them together. It seems to be because of this white core of mana. While the boy was thinking about this, the bishop came to his senses a little and grabbed the bottle. Then he threw it aside and swore by all the saints in the world that this child was a heretic. So it was necessary to perform an exorcism immediately. The boy thought he was simply incorrigible and continuing his dark deeds, not wanting to resort to this. But he ended up shooting himself in the foot. At that very moment, the priest felt something. When the bishop realized that it had been pulled out, he simply could not believe it. And this object was the remains of an exiled high-ranking demon, that is, a totem. It was an object that had inherited the ability of demons to absorb the powers of their own kind, which he carried in case of demon attacks. The old man couldn't understand how this baby could know about it at all, but he was even more shocked when the boy threw the object aside. At that moment, Isaac wanted this bastard to watch carefully, because he couldn't leave him alone. And now it was the main character's turn to attack him. When the demonic hand fell to the ground, he used his power, and the demon burst out of it. While the emperor and his knights were fussing, the boy was curious how the bishop now planned to fight back. One of the knights asked where the Shadow Lich could have come from. The emperor immediately turned to Bishop Mace, asking what it all meant. A demon in the temple. Had he gone mad? The old man, puzzled, asked if he hadn't seen the child take his totem. The man said he had seen it, but that the totem was supposed to restrain demons. So why had he suddenly resurrected it? He then ordered the guard to protect the child from the demon, as well as the bishop. They immediately took him away from the clergyman. While Masa couldn't believe what was happening, the hero was glad that this scoundrel got what he deserved. Now they would see how powerful this bishop really was. Suddenly the demon, who was being held back by the guards, began to scream for them to kill the saint. He tried to break free and rush at him to kill him. At that moment, the knights were ordered to protect the young lord. Isaac couldn't understand what was happening. He must have completely lost his mind. He had just been brought back to life, so why was he suddenly attacking him? Although he was protected by flowers and knights, so everything should be fine. But when they began to fall one after another, the boy wondered if they were really stronger. The demon continued to attack, saying that the saint must be killed to save the imprisoned king. Because of this, the main characters realized that they had to get rid of him first. In all the confusion, hardly anyone would notice his own mana. Life had just begun, and every other person wanted to take his life. He even saved this demon, and this is how he repays him for his generosity. Using his power as the demon king, Isaac showed his aura and strength. At that moment, the demon who attacked him realized that he was facing the skeleton king. Something began to happen to the baby's body at that moment. It literally began to exude divine energy. Those present also could not understand what was happening, but the dark creature in the form of a demon was being burned by the divine power. Therefore, it had no choice but to flee from this place. One of the clergymen shouted that it was a demon running away, which meant that it was definitely a holy power, and that Mr. Isaac had killed the supreme demon. It was amazing, considering he was still so young. The main character himself did not understand what the hell was going on, but it was reality, holy power. It was unclear what was wrong with this situation, and soon the divine energy ran out. Then he wondered if his mana could be converted into holy power, although it was unclear why he needed to collect it for the Holy Empire, as it was impossible to find. While he was thinking, the bishop was being attacked, and he was screaming to be let go. This child they are protecting is a heretic with demonic powers. It is unclear how a demon dares to enter your empire. He then asked my lord to allow him to prove it, saying that as soon as he performed an exorcism, everyone would see. But Alexander told him to stop accusing an innocent pretender of heresy and calling on the supreme demon in the presence of their empire's knights. Even as a member of the Holy See, he would certainly not escape punishment. Despite the whole situation, the old man realized that the seeds of doubt had been sown in his mind, so he would soon find out about the spy. And if that happened at the Holy See, there could be problems. Because of this, even at the cost of his own life, he was going to save his family. Therefore, using his power, he summoned a monster and was going to at least finish off the pretender. The magical creature immediately rushed towards the boy. The hero was not worried, thinking, "Here he is, the stubborn donkey finally showing his fangs." But does he seriously think that this weak attack will finish him off? However, he soon realized that things were not so simple when his mana ran out. When it became clear that there was no way out of this situation, someone came to his aid from outside. It was a man who was angry and asked who dared to harm Yeshua's child. It turned out to be the divine azure, which meant that the knights of Yeshua had arrived, and in their minds was precisely the seventh son of the house of Rila Yeshua. Upon arriving there, he immediately ordered the bishop to be taken into custody. But the bishop cried out to be released and did not understand how they dared to touch him. Isaac wondered where he had heard that name before. At that moment, Rila asked his knights to show respect, for they were greeting the son of Yeshua, and immediately everyone knelt down. The man apologized for delaying Isaac, which the boy already liked very much, as he was respected, which was much better than the imperial knights. Rila said that they did not expect to be forgiven for being late, but they had brought him a gift nonetheless. The boy thought it was gold and they brought him a whole ingot. But in the end, they presented him with a figurine of a skeleton king on the scaffold, and this very figurine was very similar to his previous skeleton body. The hero brought not just one, but several, where he was burned alive, and where he was beaten to death. Seeing this, the boy could not understand how he could survive in this madhouse. Those present interpreted his tears of despair as a sign that he liked it, so he cried. Isaac did not intend to think about it for long, but remembered who Yeshua was, and soon remembered that this was the saint who had attacked him back then. One of the girls introduced herself as the 40th saint. The second one shouted that she was also from that family, the 61st saint, but there was a special girl who shouted that he did not deserve to know her name, and the hero knew that they were all from the Yeshua family. Although there was nothing good about him, he was not only a contender for the role of a saint, but was also born into a family of saints. It was unclear what he had done wrong in his past life. At that moment, the bishop shouted that Yeshua was cursed. He knew that not all heretics were cursed, but it was unclear where such a monster came from. Looking at the boy once more, he shouted that he would find out exactly who he was. Just think, they brought a monster here with them, so their family is doomed. He was going to make sure that their entire house would be destroyed, but he didn't even have time to finish his sentence before a blade flew past his neck. Fortunately for the old man, the one who did it wounded him. He then told him to thank Mercy and Yeshua for the fact that his head was still on his shoulders. The hero realized that this guy was good, allowing himself to beat the bishop for insulting his family. Perhaps, if he could be persuaded, he would want to destroy the Holy See. The knights asked the young gentleman not to listen to them, that he didn't need to know this, but the boy thought, damn those morons, because he didn't like this attitude. It seems that he remembers their blue lineage. They are strong opponents. He was sure that his former henchmen would tremble in horror at the mere mention of them, and how he wanted them to stop at that moment. Soon, the emperor broke the silence, declaring that Rila was in debt. He asked if he would tell the head of the house that the imperial palace wanted to raise the child. The man remarked to his servant that he must be joking, but the boy was delighted that the imperial family wanted to raise him. Alexander said that all the forces of this empire would clearly target the young master, confident that the name of this famous... Their family is indeed strong, but can the divine azure in its current state protect him? His father would definitely be unhappy with them, because the color of his hair was a symbol of the founders of the Holy Empire. Isaac became curious about what they were talking about. The emperor also noted that the Skeleton King himself might be hunting the boy, which surprised the hero, who wondered why he would be hunting himself. Rely apologized to his majesty, but this child, Yeshua, is twisted, and he will be in their family. Whether it was his father or some Skeleton King, their family would cope just fine. Moreover, he was sure that the previous Saint Melissa would be happy to meet the authorities, and the emperor noted that he would not even argue with that. Then his interlocutor asked how they could allow the direct heir of Saint Melissa to grow up in the imperial family. This name was very familiar to the boy, and he wondered if it was the same one he had fought with before entering the world of the gods, the one who had left. It turned out that he was not only a pretender born into a family of saints, but also the direct heir of Melissa. It became even worse to realize what kind of life this was. Speaking of saints, after countless defeats against the Skeleton King, saints were created as the strongest possible weapon. The hammer of the gods, punishing evil with pure power, carrying divine light and, most importantly, the highest rank of Knights of Light in the Holy Empire. Seeing their incredible power, everyone believed that the days of the Skeleton King were numbered. The saints had power and protection comparable to spirits, vitality, the beauty of self-destruction, and much more. However, even despite all her advantages, the Skeleton King was simply merciless. He easily dealt with even this deadly weapon, but he never killed Sveta, because it would only make things worse for him if he killed the saint, as her holy energy would return to the gods. In that case, he would not be able to invest it in a new, stronger saint, but the last saint was terrifyingly strong, and the boy thought it was possible that she was now his ancestor. Rylai said that saints exist solely to kill the Skeleton King, and only their family produces saints, so their goal is to carry out God's will. He was sure that Yeshua was more capable of protecting this child. The knight of this family said that this was true, and asked if they knew how many saints had died at the hands of the Skeleton King. The hero thought they were lying, because he had not killed anyone. Then they began to accuse him of locking the saint in the labyrinth because he thought she was weak, or that the 5 had died of stress. But the boy continued to think that he was not to blame for anything, and that was the truth. Seeing his anger, Rely told him not to worry. Even if they cursed him, they would protect him, but Isaac just wanted them to leave him alone. The man who was holding him kept repeating that they were happy about his birth, that his parents wanted only one thing from him, and that was for him not to grow up as evil as the Skeleton King. Isaac understood that these were parents he didn't even know, and he already apologized in his mind for letting them down. The emperor asked his interlocutor to think it over again. The Skeleton King had been sealed away 150 years ago, which surprised the boy, and he thought that Melissa was already dead. Alexander said that during this time, the demons had gathered their strength, and saints were needed not only by the Holy Empire because their power was indescribable, but also by the imperial family. But at the moment, there were no saints in the family, and Yeshua was gone. A year had passed since the saint had given birth to this baby and disappeared with her husband. The boy was extremely shocked to realize that his mother was also a saint. Rylai said that perhaps she was gone, but the matriarch was still strong, and their family would protect him. Isaac thought that nothing could surprise him anymore, but his mother being a saint was even more surprising. Suddenly, the knights began to discuss whether Madame Melissa had left to deal with the Skeleton King's minions, that she would return soon, and that the matriarch would be happy to see her grandson. The main character was completely stunned, and Alexander said that it would be a long time before she returned. It seemed that the baby was not well. Was everything okay with him? Isaac himself knew that everything was not okay. He had just learned that his main enemies were still alive. As soon as Melissa found out who he was, he would get a hammer to the head. The others were one thing, but she was a different story altogether. In order to survive, he wanted to go with the emperor, so he winked at him. The emperor said that if they saw him, he also wanted to go to the imperial palace, while Rely said that the boy was just used to him. Alexander insisted that they could provide him with many opportunities. Perhaps their mouths were good at raising saints, but they had never raised a bright boy before. His interlocutor noted that his destiny was to become an exorcist knight, and that the Yeshua family trained them better than anyone else. Besides, he was the first holy man in the world. It was unclear where the imperial family suddenly got their experience in raising children, but while the men were trying to divide the boy, he begged the Lord to save him from these madmen. He thought he had already decided to go to the emperor, so enough was enough. And from the very beginning, the light of survival came from the emperor, which meant that with him, the chances of survival were much greater. This opportunity could not be missed, especially since the emperor said it was a wise choice for the child. At night, the bishop justified himself, saying that he was innocent, that this monster used mana and was the spawn of demons. The one who judged him said that holy power is given by the gods, so does he mean to say that the gods have bestowed it upon a pathetic demon? The old man saw the weapon in front of him and shouted that he had definitely seen mana, or, in their opinion, he could have confused mana with holy power. He was then informed that the Holy See had already passed its sentence. When the blade was at the man's neck, he realized that it was the end for him, and the cardinal continued to say that it was blasphemy. After the bishop's murder, the subordinate informed his master that he would organize another group of assassins, but the latter replied that there was no need to do so, as the emperor would take the child. There would be plenty of opportunities to get rid of him in the imperial palace, so this time he would definitely die. Now the main character was heading to Yeshua's estate. A couple of days ago, he didn't understand what that bright light was, but Riley kept telling His Imperial Highness that their family's estate wasn't a very good place to raise children. Surely for him, but simply filled with the corpses of demons and manacores, the boy saw survival in this man, which was so vivid. Riley noticed that the only thing worth paying attention to there was the corpse of the Skeleton King. The hero was surprised, wondering whose body it was and why these monsters wanted it, and it was unclear why he hadn't told him about it before. But now he had decided that he would be on Yeshua's side. So he smiled sweetly at his uncle, trying to tell them to go to them. Riley simply melted when he saw this with his own eyes. Thus, the main character thought he had traded his life in the palace for the army, but there was nothing left to do. If he wanted his body, he had no choice. The body in which he had accumulated and purified old commands so that he could be compared to the gods. If he could get it back, then 10th rank magic would be no problem. Moreover, he had never seen such a vivid survival in his life, which meant that it would be much easier to survive with his uncle at the Yeshua estate. As they rode along the road, the knight asked why the Holy See needed a young master, and the boy was also curious about this. Then Riley said that a prophecy had been given. The gods say that the saint will become their son. This meant that he would also be the next pope, and that was exactly why the House of Berith was so eager to have a child who would become a saint. The hero was horrified, not understanding what the hell was going on. He knows perfectly well that the Pope is the most powerful cleric capable of using 10th rank holy magic. For clerics and holy knights, he is undoubtedly a ruler. In the Holy Empire, his power is second only to the emperor himself. For thousands of years, all popes have come from the same family, so it is quite understandable why they are so unhappy, and it explains why other families are trying so hard to prove that the saint belongs to them. The boy's thoughts and the men's conversation were interrupted by a sound from outside. Relia asked what had happened, and the coachman replied that they had arrived at the duchy, but there was a problem. Guards stood in their way, and informed them that entry to the duchy was closed. The boy did not understand what was happening, but his uncle was very angry, saying how dare they do this. Surely they recognized the coat of arms of Yeshua. Apparently, they hadn't been taught anything at school, because suddenly his interlocutor's face changed. It turned out that they were not humans at all, but most likely demonic beings. They said that the entrance was closed because the Holy Child must die. The hero was terrified again, because he had forbidden them to enter human lands. It was unbelievable what this new king of demons was doing. One of the demons announced that you pathetic humans should listen carefully. Their king had ordered them to kill all the saints. Isaac thought that it was true that a new king had ascended the throne, but he heard the words that the demon continued to say, and in the end, they were doing it in the name of the great skeleton king Isaac. The boy was truly horrified, not understanding when he had ordered them to do such a thing. The demon said that if they left the child, His Majesty the Skeleton King might spare them. He didn't even have time to finish the sentence before he was destroyed. The other dark creatures were surprised. It was Riley who did it. He asked how they dared to say that to the exorcist Yeshua. He would then grant them a painful death, so let them listen. In the name of all the simple things in life in this world, their family would destroy evil. The knights immediately grabbed their weapons and shouted that they would go to the very depths of hell to destroy the demons. The Skeleton King was simply cursed, and he did not even think that he would send his minions to retrieve his body. The demons also became angry and rushed into the attack, not understanding how he dared to mention the great Isaac. They would revive His Majesty at any cost. The knight who was protecting the boy ran out of the carriage. He began to flee the battlefield so that the child would not be caught up in the fighting. Isaac couldn't understand what was going on here, whether someone was pretending to be him or what. The defender put the boy on the ground and asked him to wait. He would be back very soon. After saying these words, he created some kind of magical barrier. Isaac realized that this barrier was very strong, and even a high-octane demon couldn't break through it. It turned out that it couldn't be broken from the outside, but it couldn't be broken through from the inside either. Since that was the case, he decided to activate his survival instinct and burst of magic. He wanted to be heard by the whisper woven from magic but possessing a mind, the one who was watching. The entity he saw was delighted to see its master, and the boy noticed that it understood everything. They hadn't seen each other in a long time, but he asked it to be quiet. The subordinate said that he never thought he would ever see his great face again. The hero said that he didn't think so either, and even missed the whisper, even though it was just a detection spell, but it had its own personality. He had to do it because manually processing the detection results in the middle of battle was still a pain, and over time he gained consciousness, but that made him even cuter. Whisper informed him that his master's anger was still striking. He took over the child's body without a shred of guilt, but it was incomprehensible how those damn gods dared, no matter how repulsive he was, to put him in the body of that vile child. The master shouted that he should stop ranting and start looking for enemies, and his companion immediately began to do so. To begin with, he searched within a radius of 100 meters. He reported that there were a total of 88 enemies, but His Majesty would not even touch them with a finger. The boy wondered if they had gone mad, where they were going to wage war with so many of them. If the local guards were reinforced, it would be more difficult for him to communicate with his wards. At this rate, he would have to kill them himself before Yeshua understood anything. Even if it means spending all of your accumulated mana, you have to do it. Suddenly, a whisper informed him that there were fewer and fewer enemies left, and their number continued to drop sharply, now down to 31. The hero did not understand what was going on, but his uncles informed him that someone was approaching them. The demons also noticed who had arrived, and one of them was happy to see his brother. He asked them to kill this saint, who was so displeasing to them. A whisper informed the Lord that there were no enemies left and a shadow lich had been discovered. He was very angry and said that they dared to touch his king and must be killed. Isaac could not believe his eyes and realized that he too had gone mad. Isaac had freed him earlier, and the shadow lich had become obsessed with him, possessed by sympathy. Now the creature told them not to even look at the child with their disgusting eyes. Otherwise, if they continued, it would rip out their eyes. But there was a problem between them, because humans did not know the language the lich spoke. Isaac was amazed. It seemed he understood that this was the Skeleton King, and his loyalty was commendable. But it was unclear why he had decided to show himself now. While the knights rushed into the attack, the boy muttered something naturally. No one understood him, but he said that they should not touch his food. The knight who was protecting him asked him to calm down, saying they would be done soon. The lich was delighted that his master had noticed him. Now he had a reason to live. After that, he immediately headed towards his master. His uncle noticed that he was heading towards Isaac and that he needed to be stopped. The lich said that these paladins were pathetic. He didn't understand how they dared to lock him in this insignificant bubble, and the hero was glad that his subordinate had noticed him. After all, he couldn't let his mana snack die, so he wanted the lich to break this barrier. Surprisingly, his subordinate understood him and immediately struck the barrier very hard. The knights present could not believe their eyes when the barrier was destroyed. The Demon King praised the lich for doing this. Then he touched him and said that it was time for him to rest. The loyal subordinate did not understand why his master was treating him this way, and soon found himself turned into a romantic artifact. Reli, like the others, was discouraged, thinking that the boy had just turned him into a totem. Instantly totemizing a demon is just wonderful how good he is. It is a sacred spell that only the strongest, such as saints or cardinals, can use. Reli was not as happy as everyone else. He said it was totemization, but he did not feel a drop of that power. The knight noticed that convincing a person reveals their potential, and this lich immediately rushed towards the young gentleman, surely realizing that the child was a threat to his existence and trying to get rid of him first. The young gentleman is so great that he is definitely a saint. The commander understood that this man was right. The demons had indeed come for him. Even if he was not a saint, he was definitely special. But unfortunately, it was unclear why it was this boy. Perhaps it was because of the curse of the Skeleton King, who suddenly heard his ward. He said that as the captain of the Divine Azure, he would protect the young master Isaac and the future of the house of Yeshua. This struck Rila, and he realized how foolish he had been. They fear the curse of the Skeleton King, when the future of his house is very strange. So he suggested that Isaac go home, where his uncle would teach him many interesting things. He had incredible potential and would make an excellent paladin, but Isaac didn't care about these paladins. He would rather have his old body back. Suddenly, he heard his uncle say that even if he was not destined to live a long life, he would find a way to save him, and his name would be famous throughout the continent. The boy became curious about this ominous prediction. It wasn't long before they arrived at the ducal mansion of Yeshua. After looking around a bit, the main character saw how pompous this place was. But this horrified him, because it meant that they were destroying demons and still living in luxury. He wondered how much all these decorations cost in total. Damn bourgeoisie, he had to beg, and his guys barely ate. Whisper asked the gentleman to look at their shitty castle in comparison. This was simply paradise. Even a couple of statues from here were worth 10 of their castles. While the boy was angry, Relai said that this was the mansion of Yeshua, the cradle of exorcism on this continent. He asked him to look at the knights, saying that when he grew up, he would become like them. The people there were training on a mannequin they called the Skeleton King. Isaac didn't like it at all. He didn't understand what they were teaching these children. It was as if he had fallen into some kind of sect. Although it didn't particularly bother him, since he was now part of the Holy Empire, he would simply enslave the Emperor and turn it into Isaac's empire. Suddenly, a whisper asked if the Skeleton King would allow them to insult him, which was very unfortunate. The gentleman simply replied that he should cover his mouth and continue the reconnaissance. He immediately began to carry out his order, and lights lit up throughout the estate. In his subconscious, he replied that these were manacores, and there were tens of thousands of them here. For his subordinate, it was also surprisingly unclear how many demons they had killed. Soon, his uncle announced that they had arrived and ordered his subordinates to prepare his room, because Isaac would be living with him. The servant apologized, but said that they had been ordered to take young Master Isaac to the annex. Naturally, Riley asked why this was so. His interlocutor informed him that the 5th young master had said that Isaac was forbidden to enter the mansion. When the man couldn't understand why they would want to make the child live in a cursed place where people die, the hero liked these family squabbles, which meant they had wonderful mouths. Relai then noted that the older brother apparently had nothing to do, and the boy knew that it was truly incomprehensible why he would live in the annex when he could live luxuriously in the mansion. Suddenly, his subordinates informed him that the manacores were located there. The paladin said that he had sent him away in good health, that he would not allow his nephew to live with ghosts, but the child now wanted the annex. His uncle said that they were going to his room, and that every night before bed, he would read him a story about the network battles against the Skeleton King. When they were finished, he would teach him a special method of exorcism, developed specifically to defeat the Skeleton King. The hero did not want to remember all this, because he wanted to banish him. At that moment, a 5th young gentleman appeared on the road. He told his younger brother that he had first picked up a cross on the street, and now dared to make noise. He ordered that the boy be put up in the annex. His brother had not been here for a long time, but as soon as he arrived, he began to oppose his older brother. This guy's name is Goel. Even Isaac was surprised when he saw him, because he realized that he was a rare scoundrel. The older brother told the younger one to put it on the ground, and he would take it to the annex. Relai asked if he was joking. This child, their direct heir, and he wanted to put him in the annex, where they send people as punishment. He should get out of the way. He forgives him for the exorcism ritual of the Skeleton King in his room. Isaac understood that Goel did not want to see him in the mansion, but he was glad about it, because he himself wanted to go to the annex. Goel approached the boy and asked where he got this bony kid, what kind of direct heir he was. Looking at the boy's face, the hero thought he was glad that he wanted to send him to the annex. But despite this, who was he anyway? A priest or a robber? Although it didn't matter, he had to go to the annex because his manacores were sitting idle there. Relai didn't want to go and told his brother that he knew why he was sending him there. He wants to make him look like a curse so he'll drop out of the fight for the inheritance. The hero was intrigued. He understood that he needed to suck every last drop out of this family to become a saint, and then the Pope, because how else could he take revenge on the gods? Goel noticed that demons had already tried to catch him, so he was cursed. But one of the knights said that this was not true. Moreover, the young lord had exorcised the demons himself. The fact that the demons attacked him only meant that he was dangerous to them, and another person nearby confirmed this. Goel was surprised by this attitude and sarcastically declared that he was about to cry, with everyone standing up to protect a piece of trash. Let them shut up if we think he's a saint, then let him prove it with some skill. The whisper suggested that the gentleman order it with a meteor call. Soon the man said, if he is a saint, then how about this? Let him save this symbol of their home, or whatever they call it, the tree that the Duke loves so much. He was talking about the divine tree that died after absorbing demonic energy. If he was a saint, then reviving it would be a piece of cake for him. While the men were talking, the boy wondered what Melissa had actually been fighting for, as her descendants had grown up and simply relaxed. The oldest of them was missing, and the fifth was some kind of idiot. At that moment, he noticed something that caught his attention, so he grabbed his subordinate and immediately threw him aside. He turned it off so that he would take it away faster, so why did he send him there? Riley continued to be indignant that in 70 years no one had managed to revive this tree, and he wanted a child who didn't even understand his words to do something. Suddenly, they heard a noise and were amazed when they saw it. This was because the divine tree, which had been dead, suddenly came back to life. Goel said in horror that even healing and cleansing rituals had not saved it. The main character just smiled and thought that there were no problems. He simply noticed a lot of residual demonic mana in the roots of the tree and sucked it out, whispering that he had done everything as requested. The knight did not understand what young Lord Relay had done, and he said that he had done nothing. In the end, everyone found out that it was young Lord Isaac and began to rejoice. But Goel asked if they had gone mad, because no one in their entire estate could do anything, and here, in their opinion, a baby had succeeded. In any case, someone had intervened, and it was Relay, but no one listened to the man, for the knights were glorifying the saint. Goel was rightly angry about this and asked his brother what he had done. The latter was puzzled, and his older brother rushed at him, saying that he had received the power of the saint and was now pretending that this trash had done everything. While those present were arguing, they did not understand what was happening, and the boy thought that the demon hunt would have to wait and that Melissa should return and take care of his upbringing. It was unclear why the uncle's older brother didn't look anything like Melissa, while the uncle himself looked like she was wearing a man's suit. Whisper noticed that he might be half-blood, and the gentleman liked this version, and he thought to himself, doesn't he look like his father? And Goel continued to shout that he knew everything and that it was time to stop hiding it, that he didn't understand why they had brought this trash here, that he just wanted to push him into sainthood, and that was all, and that they already had a candidate long ago. Isaac was curious to know who this scoundrel wanted to see as a saint. Then his ward noticed that he was too calm for someone who had competition. The hero said that he did not consider his competitors to be his equals, while Relay asked if he really wanted to be with him, since he had abandoned him, and the boy was their nephew and the son of their older brother. So he has every right to the inheritance. Goel called him stupid, asking what kind of older brother he was, the one who ran away as soon as he smelled danger. He simply presented them with the fact that he had fathered this trash and disappeared without a trace, and the boy understood why they treated him like a bastard. The man continued to speak, but he was surely the son of a saint. She was just a half-breed picked up on the street, but still a saint. However, is he sure that this is their brother's son? He certainly looks like her. If she wants to be useful, let her sit in her room and give birth to one child after another. Before he could finish the sentence, his brother's fist flew into his face. The main character was glad that this excellent upbringing had also taught him many good things. The brothers continued to fight, and people tried to stop them. The boy thought it was better that the family was in such discord that he wouldn't even have to divide it up, and could start ruling right away. He was going to completely destroy the family of this accursed woman. His subordinate asked if he thought that if he destroyed this house, he would have nothing left, but the hero just told him to shut up. A little time passed, and he sat there as usual, doing nothing. But at that moment, he became very angry, thinking about how she was freezing him out. He was in some kind of discussion. They were saying that another boy had been born, but why should they raise him? Isaac was now convinced that the entire house of Yeshua was for the insane. Someone said that when they took a commoner and raised her to be a saint, the least she could do was give birth to a useful man, and these words made the boy even angrier. Suddenly, the woman sitting at the table also asked him to calm down. Turning to Rila, she remarked that a branch of their family had said they were ready to take him in. This woman's name was Hina. She was Elijah Yeshua's second wife and the current head of the family. So she asked why he had brought him to the main branch, and the hero realized that she was not even hiding her dislike, and that she was the one who had hurt him in the annex. Goel called his mother the current manager and said that she was asking a question, but he couldn't hear the answer. It was even worse for the hero that she was the mother of this donkey. Relay realized that his father had left his post after all. The woman noted that he had left for a short time, and the whole mess with the pretenders had gotten him into trouble. Riley said he was sorry. He should have been told that his first grandson Isaac had resurrected his beloved divine tree. Those present could not believe that this had happened. Goel said that it was a coincidence. How could the estate do something like that? And that it was the result of their joint prayers at the house of Yeshua. The old woman said that she agreed, and that the head of the house had been trying to do something with it for many years, but it was unclear how a child could handle it. Hana supported her, stating that more importantly there was no evidence. The others agreed, but the boy did not like any of this. He understood that they wanted proof and were going to show it to them. Therefore, using his own power, he immediately attracted the attention of those present. He wanted these scumbags to watch closely, and soon someone shouted that it was the power of the divine tree. It seemed that Isaac had indeed rid the tree of the poisonous mana. The old women began to say that they knew there was still mana left, but how the baby got rid of it, they noted that it could not be otherwise. He absorbed the mana and embodied it right before their eyes. A man sitting nearby said that it was true that expelling it was a difficult process, and if one was not careful, the tree could die completely. That is why the head ordered to cleanse it, not to expel the mana. Goel was horrified. I think, do they really want to say that this adult piece of meat has abilities? Rilai said that Isaac had undoubtedly followed his instincts and expelled the mana from the divine tree. This infant was able to accomplish in a matter of seconds what no one in their entire lineage had been able to do in 70 years. His older brother dismissed it and shouted to the elders that it was nonsense. It was incomprehensible how a baby could perform the exorcism ritual. He couldn't even speak yet. If they allowed such rumors to spread, their house would become a laughingstock. Just look at him. He doesn't even look like his older brother, and he certainly doesn't have the blood of Yeshua in him. He's probably the son of some beggar from the slums. In defense of the boy, Rilai asked them to listen to him, saying that one day this child would become a saint, and in the future he might even become pope. But his greatest achievement would be killing the skeleton king. Hana thought this was ridiculous. She thought he was digging his own grave. So she said that if he thought so, then he should prove it. She would request access to the treasury of holy artifacts. Northwest of the Holy Empire of Hala, in the Black Forest, a battle with a monster was taking place. The man who had just killed the creature hid his weapon and said it was boring. Suddenly, a subordinate brought him over and greeted him, and the leader asked what had happened. His interlocutor reported that the current deputy had requested access to the treasury of holy artifacts. Eli said that he had already said that the Holy See would not be given access to it, and the subordinate said that she was not asking for the Holy See. His grandson saved the divine tree, so the deputy wants to check if he really is a holy boy. The chief turned to him and asked why there was a saint in his house. He refuses to let anyone but the claimant survive in this place, so let them stop their senseless arguments and exceptions. He will not allow it. Suddenly, a woman's voice appeared behind him, asking for permission. So it was Isaac, and he saved the stagnant tree. In that case, maybe it's worth checking him out after all. It's the matriarch of the house and former Saint Melissa Yeshua. And since they were going to open the treasure chamber, perhaps they could throw all the contenders in there. The ward asked if a child from another house could take the most valuable artifact, and she replied that it would be even better, that it was long overdue. Even the greatest saints in history couldn't do it, but with him, they would definitely be able to find the skeleton king and get rid of him once and for all. Moreover, she generously intends to reward whoever can carry him out of there. Let everyone know that whoever can bring out the most valuable artifact will receive a reward that even the papacy could not have dreamed of. They will receive not only a hidden family heirloom that has been passed down from generation to generation, but also personal instruction which she herself will provide. The woman intends to teach the successful candidate everything she knows. For many thousands of years, the treasury had buried flowers, artifacts, and secret techniques, and generations of saints had kept it in order, which meant that the house of Yeshua could be called its rightful owner. Since only children under the age of 10 were allowed to enter, the treasure house was used to perform the first birthday ritual for the candidates. Then their abilities were measured by what they took out of it, but it was by no means a safe place. Even a candidate could die there, and after numerous deaths within its walls, the treasury was sealed. Speaking of this, the Whisperer asked the gentleman if he could take the holy treasures out of it, and he asked why he was involved in the exhibition. The interlocutor did not understand if he was not waiting for this moment, to which he received an affirmative answer. Because they say that the body of the skeleton king is located there. At that moment, a knight approached the boy, asking if he really couldn't wait any longer. The matriarch opened the treasury to all the contenders. Children from all 5 great houses will gather, even from the house of the accursed father. But the man is confident that he will win. Isaac thought that it was even better that way, because if there were many children gathered, their attention would be scattered, and that meant it would be much easier to take the body. At the same time, Rilai asked him to be careful. The treasure chamber is guarded by demons captured in war, and now the boy understood the danger he was in. No big deal, since they were captured. They were clearly below 6th rank or lower. It would be enough to simply intimidate them, but suddenly his uncle informed him that 8th rank demons were not easy opponents. And while the men were discussing, the heroes did not understand what kind of high-level demon had allowed itself to be captured. Whispers told him that they were all crazy to think it was a good idea to put a dragon in a place where children celebrated their birthdays. But still, the Dragon Lord's incredible knowledge would help him cope. Suddenly, he saw the former Demon King looking worried. The boy thought that dragons were dangerous, but for a completely different reason. It turns out that he had been breeding these creatures constantly, so a huge number of dragons had turned against him. Isaac realized that things were bad, and that their incredible memory would be bad if they noticed his soul. There was no other way out, since the treasuries of many high-level demons and dragons, with his current powers, he could only deal with enemies of the 6th rank. In order to defeat them, he needed to sneak into the annex where all of Yeshua's military trophies were kept, and, of course, steal the mana cores from there. After a while, Isaac sat down and looked through a book. Whisper asked the gentleman if everything was all right with him. He looked as if he was about to be played with. At that moment, the boy was reading a book of saints about 10 spells capable of destroying the Demon King. The boy thought to himself that if only he knew how to control this power, he could easily learn it. He wished someone would tell him about it. All he needed to do was control his mind and make him learn. The whisper told the gentleman that he was using dark magic in the center of the clergy. Did he really want to raze this house to the ground, revealing his demonic nature? The hero could not understand what had happened to him over the past 150 years, then began to mutter something, saying that he did not understand anything because he did not know the theory. Then his uncle approached him and said that he looked tired. It seemed that the day had been really busy for him. Isaac thought that was right. Children his age should sleep 16 hours a day. Suddenly, the man next to him started doing something. It turned out to be a holy spell of restoration. The boy liked it, and he wanted his uncle to use an attack spell next, but a whisper asked him not to move. He needed to go to the annex as soon as possible so that they would leave, and then the hero realized that this was true. You need to escort these people as soon as possible, so he decided to fall asleep. Whisper didn't think anyone would fall for such poor acting. But the paladins were glad that Sir Isaac fell asleep so quickly. He was an amazing child, quick at everything. Then they began to leave the room so as not to disturb the baby. The main character's subordinate was surprised by them. Suddenly, one of the men said that something was dangerous there, so they needed to take him with them. It was perfect that he said it was very valuable, that it was Isaac's first totem, and needed to be protected. The boy thought he had to resurrect his subordinate and wanted them to leave him. But in the end, they took it away from him, which was bad because the boy needed to extract mana from it. Although it's not so bad now, he can collect it from the annex. So he was going to carry out his plan, and Whisper asked if he really wanted to crawl all the way to the annex. The hero replied that he had a plan, so he simply asked to open the door. The subordinate said he would do everything, as he couldn't carry him all the way. Then he reported with surprise that his uncle had closed the door. The locking mechanism was on the outside, and it was even covered with your spell. Isaac ordered him to break it, but his subordinate pointed out that they would think they were being attacked and come running. This angered the hero even more. He thought he was going crazy, and he couldn't hold out just by whispering. If he used magic, everything would become even more complicated. It became unclear how to escape, and suddenly the front door opened. A child entered, not realizing that he had gotten caught. He held a totem in his hand and looked at the boy with contempt. Then he said that this child couldn't even walk, and that was terrible. This boy was the son of Gowel Joshua, and the holy candidate of the Joshua family, whose name was Shuri. The hero immediately wondered if this was his rival. The boy who had arrived thought that the totem he was holding in his hand couldn't even make him a genius. So this brat couldn't make it either. Suddenly, he began to use his magic, attracting Isaac's attention. Then he proudly announced that he would become a saint. It was unclear how this boy dared to desire what belonged to him. All this was his plan to save himself from Joshua's curse, but the hero did not want to listen to him, and, using his power, struck him with that object. Then Isaac smiled because he had found someone to carry him. Shuri, angry, asked if he even knew who he was. The boy realized that he looked like that bully uncle, so he must be his son. He saw him gathering holy mana to attack him. Thus, he definitely deserved a couple of blows. This insolent scoundrel just had to accept that he would be his porter. The rival for the position of saint realized that he was doomed. So he soon used a barrier spell, asking if the kid really thought he was so special. Seeing the boy's surprise, he couldn't believe it, and then he started saying that no one his age could use third-rank holy magic. But it was too early for him to be surprised. He used a skill of that very rank called Radiant Holiness. With this very power, he tried to attack the child, and the hero realized that it was impressive, yes, the projectile of Radiant Holiness. But it was impressive for a different reason, and he thanked him for the food. And then he began to gradually absorb all this power. Seeing what was happening, Shuri was amazed, because it was such a powerful protective spell. Isaac was curious how this boy could use this spell, because his uncle had not taught it to him. But now he could easily do it himself, because he was grateful for the lesson. Shuri didn't want him to be attacked, but the hero didn't care. The boy even asked him to stop, but it was too late. And soon his own attack, which he had recently performed, struck him with even greater force. Whisper noticed that it was quite pleasant. But how could one kill a direct member of one's family? The hero asked what it meant to kill, because in the end, he didn't even scratch him or hit him. Shuri got up, angry at this kid, and said that if he couldn't even hit him, he shouldn't have scared him. No matter what holy arts attacks he used, he couldn't defeat the holy candidates, who had already awakened at that moment. It was the same Dark Lich who declared that this boy dared to attack his king. That only meant that he wanted to die. Shuren couldn't believe it, and was very frightened. And the former Demon King climbed onto his subordinate and laughed. He declared that this scoundrel was taking him where he needed to go. Shuren Joshua was going to become a saint, no matter what. He wanted to escape from Joshua's cursed house and be a father. But now he was terrified, and didn't understand why this little brat was bossing him around. The main characters, in turn, directed him straight to the right annex. The boy did so because he was frightened by the Lich, who had just ordered him to move before he tore the insignificant human creature to pieces. In the end, Shuri decided that right now he would just focus on surviving. But at the same time, he really wanted someone to save him. Isaac's journey continued, and he drove his cab. Of course, he didn't like the way the boy was driving him, and Shuri couldn't understand where he was going in the middle of the night. Soon he realized that they had arrived at the eastern wing of Joshua's mansion, but it was a terrible place, filled with smoke and information. The guy thought that this boy was crazy, because he had brought him here, where several people had been found, so the Patriarch forbade entry. Whispers brought the joyful news that several dozen people had died here. To accumulate so much mana, one would need to train for decades until death. Isaac was already delighted by this and wanted the boy to drag him there quickly, but Shuri didn't want that at all, and they say they can't. The adults had forbidden them to enter, but after a moment, Lich easily persuaded him. As a result, Shuri was very concerned and continued on his way. After looking around a bit, Isaac realized that the inside of the building looked much worse. Suddenly, he saw something that caught his attention. The subordinate told his boss that the entire building was sealed off. There was some kind of protective barrier on every door. The young man carrying the baby asked to return here because everything was sealed anyway. Suddenly, the hero screamed, frightening the cab driver. At that moment, he also grabbed him by the hair, and the boy asked him to let go. Then they came to the portraits, and they were of past patriarchs. Since the baby Shuri wanted to come here, he wondered if he now wanted to take the place of the patriarch. But it was pointless anyway, because he would be the next patriarch. The main character did not want to listen to him at all and just threw the object with all his might towards the paintings. This discouraged Shuri even more. He shouted, "Has this scoundrel gone mad? I don't understand what he's doing." Isaac couldn't understand why anyone would put barriers on portraits. At that moment, a whisper informed the gentleman that the barriers had been destroyed, which made him happy. Isaac decided it was time to leave, but the boy who had brought him there didn't understand where he was going. Then he saw the child start to roll away in the other direction, so he asked in horror if he was a fool and where he was going after all he had done. Meanwhile, the main character continued on his way to the right room, where there were many mana cores. Shuri also wanted to get into this room, so the gentleman ordered the whisper to close the door. The boy realized that the door was closing, so he asked to stop because he wanted to see something. Isaac thought that a child like him didn't need to know about such things. Soon, when he was left alone, he decided to start absorbing all the nuclei. Shuri continued to knock on the door and shout for the boy to get out. Otherwise, he would tell the adults everything. While he was knocking and trying to open the door, someone appeared behind him. It turned out to be Relai with the knights and the elder. He turned to the boy and asked what he was doing there, and the boy said that his uncle had come just in time and told him that Isaac was a monster. But while he was saying this, the elder shouted, asking what Shuri was doing here, since he knew that going into the annex was strictly forbidden, and what he was thinking, bringing the baby here. Then the boy realized that they wanted to put all the blame on him. The woman asked how many people he thought had seen him carrying Isaac here on his back, and on top of that, traces of light attack magic had been found in his room. That meant he was responsible for everything. Shuri shouted that it wasn't true, that he had brought him here, and that part of the holy attack magic was his. But they all misunderstood. The uncle approached the boy and said that this time he had gone too far. Whatever it was, he was picking on a baby who had not even been weaned yet. So the man asked where he had locked Isaac up, and Shuri replied in tears that he hadn't locked anyone up. It turned out that Isaac had gone through that door himself. The knight still thought that Shuri was to blame for everything, and Relai tried to open the door, asking if Isaac was there. When she opened the door, she really did see the crying baby sitting there. The elder asked if he was all right, because he looked very frightened. The man picked him up and said that he was fine. He was really scared, but it didn't look like anything had happened to him. Relai looked at Shuri angrily and said that he should be ashamed of himself, and the boy tried to justify himself with tears in his eyes. At that moment, Isaac was smiling at him and thinking that thanks to him, he had eaten his fill. Shuri was terrified that this guy was also gloating over him, and while the elder was scolding him, Isaac thought about how there was more mana than he had expected. He had received as much mana as he would have gained in 100 years of training, all in one go. With that amount, he would finally be able to carry out his plan. It would take time, and his uncle told the boy that he would like to introduce him to someone. The girl next to him was named Aseli, and she would be his assistant. She introduced herself, stating that she was a paladin of the house of Joshua Aseli Lark. She would serve her master until her death. The hero was surprised and realized that they had assigned someone to watch him, probably because of what had happened last time. So he turned to the girl. He wanted to say that she was fired, but because he couldn't speak, he just mumbled something. The uncle and the girl who were looking at him were stunned. Then the assistant turned to the young gentleman, Relai. She asked admiringly if she could hold the baby. Such a hero was clearly unexpected, although in his opinion, everyone in this house was crazy. Then the uncle took a ring out of his pocket and said it was a gift for him. When Isaac saw it, he wondered if he had found it in a trash can. Whisper noted that he thought he heard something, but it seemed that Joshua's family was indeed experiencing a financial crisis. It was unclear how this could be considered a worthy gift for the master's first birthday, but suddenly Aseli was surprised and declared that this relic was sacred. This piqued the boy's interest, and his uncle said that he had bought it especially for Isaac from the council. The hero looked at the ring and realized that it was real. The ring that the saints used in the battle against him is older, and contains a small miracle of God. The holy power stored in it was simply incredible. Although it seems he can only use it once or twice before it breaks, he has a way to subdue it. And there is someone else who is very angry with him. The expression on this guy's face guarantees that it's real, looking at his little nephew as if he's about to kill him. But suddenly the man called him his cute little nephew, and declared how wonderful he actually is. He also hopes that the boy feels very comfortable here. The hero didn't understand what this nastiness was, and the whisper told him that he had probably finally gone mad and everything was only getting more complicated. Isaac broke the blessing device, the repository of religion, so he couldn't not receive it, and at the same time, he didn't expect them to give him the holy relic so easily. Before that, the elder said that if Isaac couldn't get the blessing, it would be fair for them to give it to him. Goel couldn't believe it and asked them to give it to his child. The woman said that if it was about Shuri, he had already received the blessing from the holy throne, so there was no need to be greedy, and he should just leave. Goel was angry, thinking that he was going to take it and give it to the throne, and this boy would not even understand the true value of the relic. He went on to say that if he was going to give him a gift, he should have chosen something good, not this junk. Relai couldn't understand how his brother could say such things about holy objects. And the man said that Isaac was his precious nephew, and you couldn't give him this useless thing. Then he presented his gift, and said that this ring was imbued with blessings directly from the Holy See. It would be more useful in the relic repository, and Rella could never get it for the boy. Then he asked Isaac to take it, and they would give him an old and dirty ring, but the hero did not want that, so he hid him. Let him take this awful thing with him, because it stinks terribly of his father. So he might as well give it to some dogs. He muttered something indistinct and threw the ring into the water. Riley was surprised, because that ring looked 1,000 times more expensive than the one he had given him. But the kid still chose the one his uncle had dug up. The man liked that, so he told his nephew that he would give him the best of everything. At that time, Goel and his subordinates were trying to find the expensive ring. Isaac cast a spell of weight on it so that they would never find it, whispering his determination not to even touch such a vile object, worthy of admiration. And the master asked to take this ring at dawn, although the subordinate did not like it, but still agreed. They couldn't find the ring anywhere, so Goel thought it would cost a fortune. A little while later, in his office, he was angry at the brat, because he had no idea how much the thing was worth. But it didn't matter now. He bet he wouldn't be able to use the ring properly anyway. It's the right thing for someone who can't even use spell flowers. To use it, you need to absorb the holy power of at least 20 people, and that's impossible. I wonder if at least 10 people will come to his first birthday. The next day, a huge number of people gathered on the street. Aseli said that it was surprising that there were more than 148 candidates for sainthood on the list, and that about 4,000 people had gathered today, including nobles and servants. It seemed that all the ducal families and more than a dozen marquis families had arrived, and even neighboring countries had sent their saint candidates. Wasn't that surprising? The hero did not understand why there were so many candidates for sainthood. Had the gods become lazy and simply scattered them everywhere? Whisper noted that they were exactly the kind of people who would do such a thing. Relai said that he didn't expect this either, thinking that no one would come and that it was a trap. Suddenly, a man entered the room and said, "Of course, they would not think that way." It was Count Simon Age, the head of one of the Empire's 3 trade unions and a friend of Rilai's. Rilai was surprised that Simon had also arrived, and his comrades said that the rumor had spread throughout the Empire, so how could he not come? Everyone realized that it was not a trap, and decided to attend. After all the Slovaks from Joshua's house were there. Not to mention that the family had put Joshua's head on the line, so he couldn't miss such a moment. Even his father's family would most likely bring him here. Riley said that Papa's family would never attend, but Simon noted that he also thought that the haughty royals would never show up on Joshua's land, because they hated everyone except the Barrett family. He also said that his son Armin is also a candidate for sainthood, and that the event is being organized by Joshua's family anyway, so Papa's family has no reason to interfere. His interlocutor asked him to be careful with what he said. He simply did not want to see snobs who always turn up their noses. When suddenly another person entered the room and said that there is an old saying that nothing is as dangerous as a vulgar friend. And alas, the wisdom of the ancestors is never wrong. Those present were surprised at Bishop Bereth. He said that only a weak person from Joshua's family would organize such an event, hoping that his baby would bring something from the relic repository to save the family's reputation. He was curious to see Joshua's child, who dared to declare himself a candidate for sainthood. But for some reason, he did not see him now. What a wonderful opportunity for them. The bishop sincerely prays that the candidate for sainthood will exalt the name of their family. Riley wondered if this was a ploy organized by the Holy See. The fact that the number of candidates for sainthood had grown from 25 to 148 in just the last week already raises questions. The only explanation is that the throne is turning a blind eye to the fact that these candidates are appearing out of nowhere. Everyone is trying to make their child a candidate for sainthood, and as soon as such children are placed in the vaults, they will inevitably throw out the weakest ones in an attempt to eliminate their competitors. They may even harm him during the chaos. If that happens, Isaac could be in danger. The boy from the Joshua family, except for his outstanding appearance and reputation, was completely useless. However, for those who crave Joshua's superior genes, or those who seek to serve a favored family, the fathers of the holy lineage hated him. This child was simply the perfect prey. The other children were asked to give this boy to Joshua as a little prank, so that he would not die, but would be unable to do anything. It was necessary to mix it with water and use the holy poison to teach the boy a lesson about how cruel the world can be. Let even these children make him a laughingstock, and proclaim that Joshua would never become a saint. At that moment, everyone stared at the boy in amazement as he continued to drink all the poison, which had no effect on him but only fueled his demonic energy. Those present were horrified by what they saw, not understanding how many bottles he had already drunk. Isaac in turn cursed and wanted them to bring him more of this poison, unable to kill him. The other children were very frightened at that moment and did not know what to do. Some even began to discuss what was wrong with this child, because they had even mixed in a laxative. Perhaps he had taken the wrong bottle. One of the boys wondered why he continued to drink bottles of poison. They were even ashamed of him because of this. Stop slandering Joshua's name. He should be able to say that something is wrong with him, being a candidate for sainthood. So this boy took the bottle of poison from him and asked if he was dehydrated. Then he gave him a second bottle. He said that if he wanted to drink so badly, he should drink this, but the hero refused and threw it in his face. Isaac then continued to pester the other children until they gave him the poison. Someone even wanted to give him the sacred poison, which interested the hero, so he eagerly rushed at that boy. And while they were fighting, the others discussed his incredible resistance to poisons, having heard that a person can achieve a level of natural poison breakdown by training their sacred power. This is incredible, and it confirms the fact that he drinks from poisoned bottles, perhaps to make sure that others cannot drink from them because it is dangerous. Shuri thought that all this was nonsense, and suddenly he saw a boy who asked if they really thought it was self-sacrifice. It turned out that this guy was Kina Barrett, but it was unclear what she was doing there. Shuri had never heard of the family, his father, participating, especially since Kina was the direct heir to his father's family. Those present were also stunned, not understanding what the Barrett family was doing in the repository of the saint's relics. Still, it's bad, and it seems like the winner is known in advance. The hero realized that this boy was practically guaranteed to become a saint, but is it even possible to have such pure hair color while being from the papal family? Everyone else in this family has hair the color of poop. Then Kina said that there was nothing strange about a member of the Pope's family being in the repository of the saint's relics. The Pope's family is the head of all clergy, so the repository of the saint's relics also belongs to their family, and he is only here to take what is rightfully his, so it is unclear why they find this so strange. The hero thought, judging by how arrogantly he spoke, he must be from the Pope's family. But this kid is a real monster. His holy power surpasses that of a bishop, although that's to be expected from a candidate for sainthood. Suddenly, Kina said he doesn't use such vulgar methods to humiliate the host, and they even dare to call themselves saint candidates after that. It's very nasty of them, and what good does it do to bully a child? It cannot be that the baby is resistant to poisons. It must be that the power of the saint is trying to protect him. The hero realized that stupidity is hereditary. Suddenly, the boy who approached him noticed that everything was fine, and that he would cleanse him of the poison. Those present were shocked that he could already use the holy spell of detoxification. Judging by the size of his holy power, it was at least 5th rank. Isaac thought at that moment that he was trying to pull off some kind of stunt. He was probably trying to use it to show off his skills, so he would give him what he deserved. After that, the boy immediately struck the person standing in front of him. When that happened, another person nearby said that the holy power had disappeared. Kina, I can't believe it. It's impossible for a child like him to do that. So, is the kid even stronger than him? Kina was angry about this and thought it was Joshua's doing. Looking at him, the hero was already preparing to smash his skull with this bottle. But at the last moment, Shuri stopped him and shouted for him not to do it. The children thought that he was looking after him because they were family, and it would be wrong to hit someone who was trying to save him. Did they really think they had a chance against their father's family? Shuri understood perfectly well that they were idiots. If it weren't for him, they would have all been hit over the head with a bottle long ago. Then Kina said that everything was fine. He could surprise him after all. He was still a child. Then he turned to leave and wished Joshua's children good luck. They should try to come back with at least some kind of shit to save their family's face. But of course, the best treasures here would belong to him. And Joshua, don't even dare to approach the body of the Demon King. Isaac's words piqued his interest. Shuri thought how disgusting he was, only creating problems here. At that moment, the main character tried to find out what that scoundrel had just said. Naturally, the boy did not understand him while Isaac was trying to find out about the Demon King's body. Soon, Shuri understood what he was talking about and reported that the head of the family had promised to pass on a secret technique to whoever brought him the Skeleton King's body. The main character was horrified, thinking that Melissa dared to mock his body. Soon, the boy sat and pondered that his old body had accumulated many centuries of mana, and if he could get it, reaching the 10th rank would not be a problem. But now that all these children were also looking for him, there was no way to get it. Although this was not a big problem, and the boy would step over anyone who stood in his way. Suddenly, a man arrived and asked everyone to gather. He announced that they would be leaving soon, so they should listen carefully to what he had to say. The repository of relics was the Holy of Holies, and the previous saints had left them here. The hero realized that he was starting with history, and at this rate, they would grow old here. He didn't want to listen to him, and was about to leave when Shuri saw him and tried to ask where he was going. But it was too late, and the boy disappeared. Those present were amazed, and the boy turned to the elder. At that moment, the hero used his quick step skill and decided it was time to use the holy spell he had just learned. The elder saw that the boy had rushed forward, so he shouted that it was a restricted area. If he went there, traps would be activated. The other children were ordered to rush after him, and they began to do so. At that moment, the atmosphere in the banquet hall of Joshua's residence was tense. Aseli could only hope that the young master was all right. Suddenly, it was reported that communication with the interior had been restored. The familiars follow the candidate who came in 3rd place, so now everyone will see. The door to the first vault was opened, and the trials had already begun. Armin Age was in 3rd place, and his father was very happy. Shuri Joshua was in 2nd place, and Goel couldn't believe it. But what surprised those present even more was that Isaac Joshua was in 1st place. He started at an incredible speed, using a spell. The elder ran as fast as he could to keep up with him, telling him not to run in that direction, because even more traps would be activated if he went there, and one of them hit him. The other traps also appeared instantly, and some of them hit people. Shuri screamed in horror that this boy was crazy, that it was unclear why he had gone there and caused all this. The trials of the vault were already life-threatening, and now they also had to dodge traps designed for intruders. Soon, Isaac reached the 2nd door of the vault, which was activated instantly, and the 2nd trap now required him to enter the side doors. Whisper rejoiced, telling his master that thanks to the mana he had absorbed in the annex, he had become stronger. The hero noticed that this was really cool, and now he could work even harder. Now let him go and take it. The subordinate understood his master's order and rushed towards the children. At that moment, one of them was greatly surprised. He saw a child floating in the air and realized it was Joshua. But it was unclear how he was flying. Perhaps his family had taught him beforehand, and that was unfair. Shuri himself understood that no one had taught him, and he was moving right now against his will and wanted to be left alone. Very soon, whispers told the gentleman that an informant had already been brought here. Shuri asked to stop this madness. He didn't know how the boy had passed the tests of the first vault, the test of choice. But from the second vault, a single mistake could kill him. He must overcome his fear and choose the difficult path to develop his senses. The hero used an attack spell because the boy was too noisy. Then he asked him to tell him what was in the second vault. The boy noted that as soon as he entered the vault, he should never attack enemies. Isaac didn't understand what nonsense this was and why it was impossible, but his interlocutor said that this was the only way to pass through the second vault. Whatever appeared, just stand still for 3 minutes until they disappeared. He then asked him to say that he understood everything, otherwise they would both die. The hero realized that this was just nonsense, probably a test of his patience. Shuri realized that they didn't believe him, so he said that someone had actually died from this. But Isaac continued to think that there was nothing complicated about it. All he had to do was not attack, and 3 minutes would not be a problem for him. When he touched the next door, he was greeted by a floor of imperturbability. Patience is a virtue, and cold reason must remain calm and unshakable. Their patience should lead them to success. At that moment, a small group of children was moving along at the very end. One of them, alarmed, asked if he was sure that everything would be all right, since they were the last ones. Their leader was Kina, who smiled and said there was no need to take the dangerous path, and that the meat could do it for them. Had the boy forgotten that there was an 8th-rank demon at the entrance to the second storage room? He was sure that those who were ahead would get stuck there. When the bright light began to knock, the boy asked if he would see it. There was a bright certainty that the trials had already begun. The main character was told to keep his spirits up. Only then would his patience lead him to success. Isaac didn't want to listen to this nonsense at all, so he tested his skill on the one in front. Shuri was terrified and couldn't believe he had done it. He remembered the words that 3 minutes would not be a problem for the boy and realized that it was just horror. So, in horror, he shouted that this kid was crazy. The hero tried to say how he had to be patient in this god's video, but Whisper pointed out that he had already lasted 3 seconds, which was enough. Suddenly, the boy was told that he had failed and would be punished by God. Shuri was very frightened when he saw that creature, but the main character immediately attacked it with his power. Then the boy couldn't believe what he saw and wondered who he was. The demon, which looked more like a golem, began to gradually crumble. Isaac wondered if it was really an 8th-rank demon, or if they were just laughing at him. The golem was created by the magic of his subordinate. The Skeleton King's elite demons are 14 familiars, and they have a distinctive type of magic. The hero wondered if they worked for Joshua's family like dogs, or maybe it was somehow related to his body. Although he would only find out when he left, Shuru saw his movement and asked where he was going. Suddenly, someone from the side began to laugh loudly, saying that he never thought that the guys from the Joshua family would do them a favor. They were children making their way through the bushes, one of them asking if the others could see. He said that Joshua knew how to pass the test. The one who said this was named Nizer Sepet, one of the 5 candidates for the Pious Crimson. He thanked the boys for defeating the gatekeeper and told them to step aside so that they could enter the second vault first. These guys had no idea how much they had to go through because of this scum, and he could activate the traps if he went inside. The hero was surprised that there were still many survivors. Nizer continued to say that he would never have thought that Joshua was capable of such abomination. Sure, he probably works with this kid too. The guy replied in horror that he wasn't working with anyone, but Nizer said that everyone had seen the kid dodging the traps, and did he really think he had done it himself? Then they saw our boy's artifact. The insolent man next to Isaac took the ring, saying that it must be impregnated with something extra. He showed it to the guys and said that with it, they wouldn't be able to heal him from the traps. Shuri understood perfectly well that he was very wrong. The boy's inaction also made him very anxious, because he was definitely not the type to let others take things from him. Nazer, along with the others, went ahead, saying that the war was swallowing dust. The one who would return the body to the royal flight, something no one else had ever done, would be none other than Nicer, the 3rd son of the Crimson Ducal family. His name is Nicer Sepet, and after saying his name, he took his first step. Immediately after that, the fire trap was activated. Shuri was horrified by what had happened. He realized that Isaac had simply used these children as bait. Soon, Shuri was already dragging the baby to the second vault, and the hero was glad that all these traps had been destroyed thanks to these brats. But he still couldn't understand why these guys were chasing him. They, in turn, thought that he must have some kind of divine feeling, most likely because he was from a family of saints. Whisper said that it seemed like they realized the greatness of their master, although Isaac didn't get it at all. Shuri thought they should run away before it was too late, as this guy was scarier than demons. Suddenly, another boy appeared, and told Isaac that if a saint really existed, he would be someone like him. He then introduced himself, saying that his name was Pari Julius, and that he was the 2nd prince of the kingdom of Julius. The children nearby began to discuss that this kingdom was located east of the Holy Empire, and they had heard that the prince had received God's blessing there. The hero found this guy useful. Suddenly, his driver addressed him and informed him that they had arrived. They were now standing right at the door to the third vault. The candidates were immediately greeted as soon as they approached. It was reported that this place was a floor of memory, and they would need to show their courage and determination. The children were delighted that they could go to the next vault, glad that they had followed the boy instead of Nazar, and that they would be able to obtain the body of the Skeleton King. The creatures continued to say that the test would be easy, that they needed to defeat them and gain glory. Once again, there was discussion that they had said to show courage, which meant that they had to break away from them. Isaac, in turn, saw a familiar gatekeeper. He was happy about this and thought it would be really fun. Then the boy began to make strange noises. Shuri thought that Isaac's decisions were always correct, so the gatekeepers were lying. The first vault was related to choice, and he simply skipped it. The second vault was related to calmness, but the baby there was not calm at all. The third vault was related to memory, which was a clue, and the children had to remember what happened in the first and second trials, so the boy realized that under no circumstances should they attack them. The main character was trying to drive the other children away at that moment, and Shuri was surprised that he chose the right answer this time. No matter what kind of devil he was still a descendant of a saint, so perhaps something of her had manifested itself in him. True, he probably just misunderstood the language all this time. He was ready to sacrifice himself to lead people to the path of truth, but at that moment, there was an explosion. After Isaac himself used his skill, Shuri was once again simply discouraged. And the one whom Alice had informed that they had made the wrong choice also rushed into the attack. Therefore, the children who made it here were immediately struck by the force. Shuri also couldn't understand why this happened, and he wondered if it could be that this boy was doing all this officially. When he saw his joyful face, he realized that he was crazy. The main character was happy because he hadn't seen his subordinates in a long time. Those who had thrown them over were demons, and they said that it was foolish to trust the words of strangers, that they were deceitful puppets created by the magic of 14 familiars. Isaac wanted them to show these brats how cruel life could be. Soon, the children couldn't understand where Joshua had gone. They had been here just a minute ago. At the same time, the main character had simply cast a 6th rank holy spell, invisibility. He thought his uncle had blessed him with this spell so that he could activate it at a critical moment, and what a wonderful time to use it. Pari was also affected by it, so he thanked the boy for casting it on him. The hero noted that he had done nothing special and threw him his ring. His companion was surprised and asked if he was giving it to him because he was not used to fighting demons. He was very grateful for this and would never forget this kindness. He even intended to tell his father, but before he could say anything, his body became like a corpse, and his mana was sucked out of him. The Whisperer expected only this from his master, and the boy did it because the prince possessed the greatest power. Shuri was simply horrified, not understanding what kind of monster his uncle had brought into their family. The other children tried to group together to find someone who could use the protective holy power. One of them said he would use this power first, but at that moment, the demon had already rushed to attack him. The boy who tried to use the protective mana started to run. He wanted to damage the enemy, but in the end, he failed. Because he was enraged, he simply fell to the ground. The boy who was nearby asked in horror what had happened to him. And at that moment, the demonic ring appeared near his head. Just like with the previous guy, it sucked all the mana out of his body. The demon was a little confused, not understanding what had happened to them. He began to look for anyone else who had fallen for their lies. She whispered to the master that the holy ring had absorbed all the holy power of the children, but the master ordered her to take it from the others as well. The servant immediately set out to carry out this order. And again, one after another, the children began to fall, drained of strength. Isaac thought that the children were not offended, because the deceitful puppet does not attack neutralized enemies. It is better to lose consciousness from having one's holy power sucked out than to be struck in the face. The whispering voice reported again that almost everything was ready. Suddenly, some other force appeared, and on a large scale. It was immediately directed at one of the deceitful puppets. The shockwave knocked even the Whisper unconscious, and the boy who had brought him said to Isaac that he had finally found him. It turned out to be Papa Kina's heir. The hero kept wondering where he had gone, and finally he showed up. Shuri, in turn, was simply amazed, thinking that this guy was definitely a genius, because he was able to summon the Holy Spirit at such a young age. Kina told Isaac that he was surprised, not expecting that there was anyone else here who could defeat the demon, except for him, of course. Or maybe he just lured the other children into a trap, as he did in the first trial. If that was the case, then things were very bad indeed. Suddenly, more children appeared and reported that he had tried to pass the trials for them, even telling them which direction to go. That meant he was their benefactor, and the hero couldn't understand how these children could be so foolish. Kina noticed that if they called him their benefactor, weren't they ashamed to call themselves candidates for sainthood, considering that they needed the help of a baby? The boy pointed out that he had been hiding all the time, and now he was talking as if he had accomplished something, but he hadn't even done anything when they were all looking for traps. The others also supported him, saying that Isaac was more like a saint, that Kina had avoided all the trouble, and that they would tell their parents about it as soon as they got out of there. While they were talking about it, Shuri thought that none of it was true, that this baby was sucking all the strength out of them. After a while, a magical substance rose up in the commotion. The door to the third vault was open, which meant that the second test was complete. The candidates were congratulated on passing this stage, and it was said that this was the last gatekeeper guarding the relic vault. Now they had to choose whether to take the treasures and end the trial there, or go on to the third vault. When one of the participants tried to announce this, the gatekeeper asked him to choose for himself. He repeated the same words exactly. He also added that if they pass the trials, they will find the treasures of the third vault, but if not, they will simply die. Whisper informed them that, judging by the manner in which he sensed it, this was no ordinary creature. The gentleman said that it was true, that it was a dragon, and that he had not seen one in a long time. So what the doctor said, that death is also true. The guys were in a fighting mood. They wanted to move on because they had overcome many obstacles. The gatekeeper said that if they still wanted to take the test despite the danger, then he agreed. And he announced that the test would be for them. The final test would be quite simple. They just had to say a prayer to their god. The candidates were surprised to see another statue, the one called their god. The dragon said that they must show respect to their god, and only those who proved their faith would go to the third vault. Once again, the participants began to discuss this strange test. The main character, in turn, thought that he would never do it. He was not going to kneel before this scoundrel, not before the one who had deceived him for hundreds of years and ultimately tried to seal him away. Suddenly, one of the participants said that there was nothing complicated about it. They could see it, they just had to pray to their Lord. So he knelt down and began to pray to the Supreme Lord worthy of all honor and glory, and the servant offered him worship. After that, the gatekeeper said that he had studied well and passed the exam. The other children understood that in order to move forward, they really needed to pray. Isaac, on the other hand, simply went downstairs. Shuri shouted that he simply had to pray, but the boy clearly did not want to. Next, Kina approached the statue and said that everyone there had taught him how to pray properly. He went on to say that the children needed to adopt the correct posture when worshipping their Lord. While he was praying, one of the children did not understand what to do. Then the gatekeeper asked what they were waiting for, whether they were giving themselves up and accepting death. This convinced everyone else, and they immediately fell to their knees. Suddenly, the gatekeeper noticed the main character and asked why he was not kneeling. He replied that he was not crazy enough to engage in such nonsense. This surprised the children, who did not understand what was wrong with him, whether he had a problem with faith. Although it was not surprising that the rumors about Joshua's family losing their faith were probably true, Shuri felt uncomfortable about it and thought that the boy should just stop asking for their family name and simply pray. Kina also understood that all of this would be recorded, so did he really want to lose his chance to become a saint? Even with his immense talent, it was all useless without faith, which meant the boy shouldn't have paid any attention to him at all. The gatekeeper said that such behavior was very disrespectful. Ice cursed, saying that he would rather die than kneel before this scoundrel. He would rather kill him than let him do it. The gatekeeper called him a blasphemer and said that he would now do what he wanted. The hero continued to rage, even when he was under enormous pressure. Then he even thought about smashing the statue to pieces. Just as he was about to attack, the gatekeeper smiled and announced that he had passed the test. Now he could enter the third vault. Kina couldn't believe what he had just heard. He reported that the gatekeeper had said that they had to show their faith in order to pass. But this child hadn't even prayed and had passed. It sounded like nonsense. The gatekeeper repeated that this child was the only one who could pass through this door because he had shown his faith. He then asked if they really didn't understand why. He tried to explain that they had bowed down before a statue, not before God himself. Then, was their faith really worshipping some idol? The children understood perfectly well that even if it was a statue of the Lord, it was still an idol, which meant they had been deceived. The gatekeeper asked to see the child again, and even in the face of death, he did not give in and kept his faith. Therefore, only this child could enter the third vault. Kina was very angry and couldn't believe any of it. So he approached the statue and said that the child could not even speak yet, so it was impossible to prove that he had not knelt down out of faith. Moreover, if this child had such faith, how could he not have stigmata? The other children were surprised and began to show that they did have stigmata after all. Kina knew that the baby was the only one among the candidates who did not have them, so he had to give up. He did not deserve to become this if he did not even have stigmata. The gatekeeper said that if that was the case, it was because he was still a baby. The children were surprised when the statue began to move. The boy asked if it made any sense at all and how it could have been moving all this time. In that case, let him in. If someone without a stigmata could enter, then he should enter, because he had one. The gatekeeper said that he should understand that he did not receive it because he was special. He then asked if everyone thought so, and if they all wanted to enter the third vault. Naturally, they said yes. Then the statue said that there was nothing to be done, and he would send everyone there. While the other candidates rejoiced, one of them wondered if he was letting them in so easily. Suddenly, the gatekeeper said that if they wanted to jump into the fire like models, so be it. Then, of course, he would let them all in. At the same time, the door of the third vault opened and a stream of dark mana poured out. The candidates immediately began to suffocate as it overwhelmed their bodies. The gatekeeper asked if they could feel the dark mana emanating from the Demon King's body. These fools needed to know their place, and he planned to spare those who could withstand this mana. Isaac felt a tremendous power that was very familiar to him and was beside himself with joy. He understood that his Skeleton King's body was ahead of him. His treasure lay there. He never thought he would live to see the day when they would be reunited after self-destruction in the divine realm. How much delicious dark mana was seeping out of him, simply delightful. While the boy smiled madly, the gatekeeper asked him to look at him, proving once again his faith, the face of a brave warrior. The boys in turn understood that his eyes were already shining. It was unclear what kind of child he was. The gatekeeper said once again that it was not too late. Those who were unable to smile in the face of death could turn around and leave. If they lost now, he would allow them to choose treasures from the strictly guarded vault. Shuri did not understand how he could pass through such a dark aura. Some of the candidates no longer wanted to go in because they could die. They just needed to choose the most beautiful item from the second vault. Kina said that he did not need the treasures from the second vault, and that they were going to the third one. To everyone's surprise, he asked for the traps to be activated. No saint in history had ever managed to return the body of the Skeleton King, not even the renowned Saint Melissa. The gatekeeper said that he seemed to know about the third vault, and the boy thought that Saint Melissa would never let the children die. He knew that the gatekeeper was just a precautionary measure. So he said again what he didn't want to hear, that they had found treasures that would cause them problems. Therefore, he asked for the third vault to be returned to its original and most dangerous state. And this is necessary in order for him to be valued higher than the saint herself. The hero thought that this boy had gone mad. In the end, the gatekeeper said that since he had spoken so highly of the saint, it would now be easier to determine who would become a saint. Even those who had supported him all this time were frightened and told him to go alone. He didn't need to take them with him. Upon entering the next room, it was clear that chaos reigned there. Whisper immediately asked the master to look closely. Amidst all this chaos was his own body. Isaac was very happy again, because not only was it his body, but it was also absorbing the energy of the third storage room. The candidates who entered were surprised that only one hand of the Skeleton King's body was emitting so much dark mana, and the main character knew that it wasn't even the whole hand, but only the thumb. That was all that remained of his body, and the rest was probably just a copy. Suddenly a demon appeared where the Skeleton King's body had been. Some of the children were even frightened, because they did not think that demons would appear after the second trial. Seeing their surprise, the gatekeeper said that they themselves had asked to remove all protection. At that moment, the main character felt a familiar power. The demon, who appeared with horror, asked how these insects dared to covet the body of his king. One of the boys said it was all because of kin, and wondered if he would take responsibility for it. The boy asked them not to worry and to trust him. He would make sure that everyone left with the treasures. Then he thought about the 14 familiar elite subordinates whom he had trained for the Skeleton King, and the fools captured by his father's family. The boy prepared a holy spell for them that would work against this creature, and all the treasures would belong to him. So he used it and ordered the demon to kneel. He realized that the spell had worked well, and now he would make a name for himself. But when the light faded a little, it turned out that the creature was alive, and even more angry because of what the boy had done. The demon thought that this must be the one who dared to covet the body of his king. A crowd of people had already gathered at the entrance to the relic repository. They did not understand what was happening inside, as communication had been interrupted. Suddenly, someone reported that a great disaster had occurred, as the demon's seal in the third repository had been destroyed. Simon asked in horror if it was one of the 14 familiars. Riley couldn't understand how this could have happened, but if it had arrived, then he didn't think so. The repository was definitely in danger. Those present began to ask about the elders who had gone as supervisors. and they were told that they had tried to disable the trap mines in the vault and had disappeared. This meant that the children at the vault were in grave danger because they would not be able to cope with such a monster. It is necessary to restore this trial and get them all out of there. Suddenly, a bright magical light appeared at the entrance and blinded everyone. Seeing it, Relai wondered if the relic storage was opening. It was unclear what this intense magical light in front of them was. Someone even asked everyone to step back because it was dangerous, as mana could leak out. The elder immediately declared that this was not the case, because he did not sense the presence of a demon. This meant that the demon was probably damaged, and Bishop Bereth thought that Kina had definitely done it. The others also thought that one of the children had defeated the creature, and most likely it was the Pope's family. Those present even began to congratulate the cardinal, as this was a worthy result for the strongest candidate for sainthood. The man proudly announced that it seemed Kina had done a great job. At that moment, he thought that this was the end of Joshua, and their foolish disobedience to the papal family's authority. Now that they had the body of the skeleton king, they would have to bow down before them. Now was the time to interrupt their winning streak. At that moment, they announced that the children had already begun to come out, and asked everyone to watch carefully. Riley was very worried about both Isaac and Shuri, hoping that they would be safe. After a short while, everyone finally made it out. Riley found out that some of them had been injured, but there were no serious injuries, which was great. However, it turned out that the children who had entered the third storage room had not yet returned. Perhaps they were in trouble, but soon it was reported that the last group of children was approaching. Armin and Shuri were in the front row. Their fathers were naturally worried about their sons, so they rushed to them. While this was happening, Day wondered where Isaac was. It was clear that the boy was definitely not with them. At that moment, Cardinal Bereth turned to his son. He asked what he was holding in his hand, saying that it was not what was needed, and that it was unclear where the body of the Demon King was. The boy became alarmed and did not know what to say, trying to mumble something. His father asked who had told him to bring such a useless thing. At that moment, a bright magical ball appeared, literally exuding holy power. Someone noticed it and asked the others to look too. It was a magical wolf carrying a baby in its teeth, and that baby, in turn, was Isaac himself. Riley and the hero's assistant rushed to him immediately. Both of them were amazed, and the girl asked if it was really the young guardian dragon that guarded the relic's repository. And it is he who is the sacred dragon. Riley knew that she was indeed right. It was a beast protecting the repository of relics. Although it resembled a wolf in form, its spirit belonged to the holy dragon, the one whom the matriarch, deeply connected to dragons, had summoned to guard the relic. Its very existence was noble, and suddenly the man wondered what that sound was. It turned out to be Isaac, chewing on a bone in his mouth. Seeing this, the elder was amazed, and the knight asked if it could forget the thing they were thinking about. It was probably part of the skeleton king's body. The old man said that it was not right to pull it into his mouth like that, but the others were glad that he had done so, and brought the skeleton king's body. Cardinal Bereth, enraged, turned to his son and asked if he had really given the body of the demon king to this child. If so, he could not call it a smart tactic. Rather, it was the mercy of a saint to save his master's face. The gatekeeper asked what nonsense they were talking about, as no one else but this child had been to the skeleton king's body, and they were simply fools if they believed that this was not the case. Earlier, Kina couldn't understand why his holy spell wasn't working. But the demon, enraged, called them fools and rushed to attack. At that moment, a column of smoke rose up from where the children were standing. But none of the candidates were hurt, even though they couldn't resist, because it turned out that a protective barrier had appeared right in front of them. They recognized the distinctive color of this account, which meant that Joshua's child had done it. The familiar continued to rage, asking how they dared to desire the body of the great demon king. Once again, he headed straight for the baby to attack, but the main character also attacked him, thinking that he was just a scoundrel, since he was unable to recognize his master. Those present discussed that the dragon would not lie, which meant that Joshua's child was real, but he had brought him. Relai pointed out to the dragon that it was too dangerous. 14 familiars are not demons that ordinary children can handle, so why did he remove the seal? The gatekeeper smiled and said that, speaking of which, the boy with white hair had asked them to be released. The children also confirmed that Kina had asked the dragon to activate all the traps, and he had even forcibly brought them with him, putting them in danger. The adults realized that their children had almost been hurt because of him, and they couldn't understand how someone from their father's family could have done such a thing. If Isaac hadn't defeated the demons, everything could have ended badly, which means that Joshua's child defeated the child of the father's family. It's surprising, although it's difficult for him to become a saint, but he is so strong, which means that the rumors that Joshua's family is preparing for their return are true. Riley was happy about these rumors, thinking that the tongue had done a great job. The elders tried to take the bone away from him because it was dangerous. But the main character had no intention of giving it up, and for some reason, he was very strong. He thought that now he had a lot of mana, and perhaps it was because of survival that he was able to absorb it. The elders said that Isaac had done a great job, and that the matriarch would be happy to hear this, and his uncle noted that this was true. The old woman continued to say that they would finally be able to track down the Demon King and find the soul of the Skeleton King with the help of a spell. The hero heard this and understood why they needed his body. Now all the elders wanted Isaac to give up his body. They wanted to track down the Skeleton King with him and tear him to pieces. Finally, they would be able to resolve their century-and-a-half-old grudge. And in order not to give up a finger, the boy immediately swallowed it. Then he tried to escape on the dragon, thinking they were crazy and hoping he would never have to see them again. Time passed, but the elders had no intention of searching for the Skeleton King's body. They even dug around in what the baby had recently produced, but found nothing. Isaac thought they could search all day, but they still wouldn't find anything. What bothered him most was what had happened in the relic repository. He had attacked the demon, thinking that it was incapable of recognizing its master. Suddenly, he felt its power and asked if it was really his master. He said that when he heard about his death, he thought his world had come to an end, but he always knew that he would return to them alive. Even before his death, he said he wanted to serve his master. The infant did not fully understand his speech and hoped that he was speaking normally, because he had many questions to answer. However, in the end, he was unable to learn anything, and now the hero thought that someone from his father's family had probably captured him. And if that was the case, then he had to check if it was true. At that moment, Riley approached the baby and asked Isaac to poop, and he also needed to bring more laxative. Isaac was terrified of this madhouse, and decided that he would soon change everything. The elder nearby said that if the matriarch found out, she might even cut him open, but the man immediately asked him not to worry because everything would be fine. Although she had cut open one of her sons, and this was her grandson. Whisper asked the master if Melissa had gone on a pilgrimage with the matriarch, and he replied that it was true, they would need time to finish. And the hero just needed to absorb all the mana before she returned to avoid it. Suddenly, Gol entered the room and informed Riley that the matriarch was summoning him. The brother asked in horror if his mother had already arrived, as she had never returned from a pilgrimage so early before. The hero was also terrified, thinking that they had returned early because of him. And he, in turn, had not even finished consuming the mana, and that was bad. Knowing that crazy woman, she would definitely perform an autopsy on him. After a while, those present saw many valuable items, all of which were gifts for Isaac. Riley breathed a sigh of relief, thinking that the matriarch herself had come. Gol said that she hadn't arrived yet, but had sent a voice message saying that she would return with the patriarch, and he didn't say a word about his arrival. The hero was also angry that he had deceived them. The knights also reported that their father had sent gifts as well. The elders welcomed them back and told them to sell everything. But then the Pope's messenger arrived and said that the emperor was extremely interested in this event, which had been prepared by the Pope's people as a sign of change and gratitude to Joshua's family. At the same time, it seems that they are not thrilled with their father's gifts. However, they will most likely like this little thing, the cardinal said. It will help a lot, Isaac. The others couldn't believe it and saw that it was a triple crown. Isaac asked his subordinate what it was, and he replied that it was a medal, a disgusting sign with the Pope's seal. While they were discussing how amazing it was, the novice asked Rila to take it for the baby. The boy thought it was already meant for him, so why were they giving it to his uncle? The man asked if he had really said to give it to him, and not to Isaac. The priest noted that it was true that he had been ordered to make sure that he received it. One of the elders asked in surprise if he was really giving something that belonged to Isaac to another member of the family. He must be out of his mind, because he was doing this knowing that giving the medal to another family member symbolized the death of the recipient. The novice smiled and asked them not to misunderstand his father's good intentions. He had only been instructed to do so because Isaac was still too young. The old man asked about the ribbon on the medal. Surely people, father, don't know that a sunflower symbolizes a dead person? The hero wondered if he really wanted him to die, which meant he had gone mad. And the woman said that he was cursed in his house, that every time they mocked Joshua's curse. Goel asked them to calm down, saying there was no need to rush, and his interlocutor asked if he thought they should be relaxed. The guy noted that it might look like Joshua's open hostility towards his father's house, but making a mountain out of a molehill would not benefit the whole family. He knew it was a humiliating way to tell them to know their place, probably the work of Cardinal Goel, who was close to their family, but it was still somehow indecent. So Riley and that brat wouldn't be able to achieve much, which was better for him. The older brother asked the younger one not to be ungrateful and to accept it, but the main character thought that this would not work at all. So he used his power and immediately set fire to the metal with his mana. Those present were surprised to see that it was a bright flame, but still no one understood who had used it. Then they looked at the baby and realized that it was him. The novice, not understanding, asked what it all meant. The medal had been awarded by the Pope himself. Were they really going to rebel? The elders who were protecting the baby said that they did not do it on purpose, that it was a child, and that there was no need to persecute a child who could not even accept the medal. Rilai noted that, unfortunately, the accident happened before he received the gift, so they would behave as if they had received nothing. Or, if they wanted, they could accept the medal sent by the Pope himself, even though it had melted from the child's flames. The novice asked for it back, probably because he had brought the wrong one. But when he tried to approach, the holy flame covered his body. The elder then played with the child, saying that he liked to play, but the hero did not want this, and thought it would be better to let him go. Soon, the Pope's messenger left the place in despair, saying that Joshua was simply cursed. After what happened, Isaac was grateful, but the medal had to be disposed of as soon as possible. Someone said that their matriarch would see the face of the Pope's sycophant. Riley did a great job, and it was a wonderful idea to use the holy flame, but the man himself did not understand what they were talking about. Then he was asked not to pretend. He probably put the sacred fire on the child. The man asked in surprise if it was the elders who had done it. In the end, after all the discussions, it became clear that Isaac had done it all. He was simply able to use all the sacred spells in some amazing way. The secret scripture was a legendary treasure that allowed one to instantly learn and recite the spells contained in the book. Isaac understood that it was a good idea to take the book from the vault with him. It was weaker than the flame magic he used when he was the Demon King, but still very useful. The elders discussed whether his mother had used a divine spell, even though she was not a fire mage, but rather the complete opposite. It wasn't even about his talent now. It was like writing poetry without learning to write. Although even the brilliant Saint Melissa had mastered reading before uttering her first holy spell. Isaac's assistant joined the conversation, noting that it was even more surprising that he was able to destroy the Pope's blessings. And then they reported that it was indeed undercooked, and also asked for the medal to be brought so that it could be checked. Suddenly it was discovered that it had disappeared somewhere. It was unbelievable, because it should have been there all this time. At that moment, Goel said that he had thrown it away. They themselves had asked him to get rid of it just recently. Then there was a quarrel among the elders, and they were about to go back to look for the medal. Goel knew that melting down his father's medal, which was supposedly made of non-meltable metal, would take some effort, and Joshua's leaders definitely shouldn't hear about it. They, in turn, would not be able to prove it without evidence. A few days later, west of the Duchy of Joshua, Eli was located. He informed the others that the mansion was not far away, so there was no need to relax. And suddenly he saw something that caught his attention. In the manor itself, the elders could not understand why the Skeleton King's body was not coming out, and the hero was just happy about all this laxative. The elders were already desperate that he had drunk 300 bottles of poison and eaten 500 fruits at Julius's house, but the hero thought that the fruits were delicious, and that they could increase his closeness to the holy beast. Holy beasts, in turn, are very helpful in battle, and there is no reason to avoid them in the future. The boy will need them to defeat his father and the gods. And there must be one in Joshua's house too. The boy thought about this and saw it through the window, and it was Joshua's holy beast, the holy whale. This was not the most surprising thing, because sounds began to be heard from behind the door of the room. Soon the door swung open, and the patriarch entered. When those present saw him, they immediately greeted him. Isaac finally saw who the current patriarch and his grandfather was. Considering how strongly he radiated survival, the boy had a good feeling. Rilai asked his father to give them a little more time. Opening Isaac's stomach would not solve anything, but the boy thought that his uncle would not cut him open for anything in the world, so as not to worry him. The old man in turn pointed at the boy and said to send him into your flame. The main character was terrified, thinking that he had misunderstood the meaning of survival. It was unclear why they wanted to burn him. Perhaps only his uncle was on his side. Rilai noticed that he was still too young to enter the flames, and the boy thought it sounded as if they were going to burn him. The younger son asked his father to reconsider, while the older son said that it was true, that it was too great a reward for him. Of course, if they threw Isaac into the fire, they would be able to retrieve the Skeleton King's body, and he would most likely become stronger thanks to the blessing. Rilai asked for a little more time, and his brother suggested simply cutting him open. Isaac kept thinking that they were a crazy family. Goel reported that the flames and water in the temple, the secret treasures of Joshua's house, used to raise the saint, were being offered to be used on a weak, snotty baby. The hero understood everything this man was against, and it was definitely good for him. He said that Shuri was perfect for the job, but it should be remembered that it was he who defeated the demon in the relic vault. Relai asked what he was talking about, because it was the tongue that defeated the demon. The older brother noted that the dragon must have been mistaken, as it was unclear how a boy who could not even walk could have done all this. Relai said that his brother was crossing all boundaries. Isaac even used that flame to burn the metal sent by their father. They saw it with their own eyes, so it couldn't be denied. Suddenly, Eli took the very thing out of his pocket and asked if this was the metal they were talking about. The only one who has a connection to heaven is their father, and the item imbued with the blessing of the aforementioned figure is blessed gold. The hero knew that they could melt it so easily, even as the Demon King, and it was unclear how that happened. Had he become more powerful in this new body? Seeing the metal, Relai asked in surprise how he found it, and the patriarch noted that he picked it up on the way. It was at the bottom of Lake Eliseva. Relai asked his father to look at the power of the boy's flame, which was so great that he was able to melt his father's symbol. Isaac himself was glad that now they could show that Joshua's house was superior to his father's. The uncle continued to say that he could withstand the fire of the Demon King, and the elder also confirmed that Isaac would become a remarkable hunter of the Skeleton King. Many townspeople had suffered from the Demon King, who still remained in the shadows, and if this problem was ignored, a new era of the Demon King would dawn. Whispers told the gentleman that imposters were running rampant, and Isaac said it was interesting who it could be, but overall it didn't really matter, and it was even better if they attracted more attention. Suddenly, Relai shouted that now was the time to remember what had happened 70 years ago, when the Demon King broke into Joshua's house and destroyed everything. Hearing these words, the main character was surprised. His uncle said he did it because he wanted to break the line of holy blood, and just the thought of the curse made his blood boil. The subordinates told Isaac that this could not be, sir, and he thought about it, which is why they spoke of a long life. The curse of an average demon is nothing more than child's play. He would simply suppress it with his superior mana, and it would be lost. Suddenly the elder said that even if it did not kill them, it would poison their lives with erectile dysfunction, or stunted growth. Many of those who had lived all these years were without a single hair on their heads. Hearing this, Isaac thought he would kill the scoundrel. The patriarch looked at the baby and said that everything was bad, his eyes were red, and he was also cursed. This only meant that fire and water would not be enough. The boy became alert, thinking that he was causing him anxiety. Then Eli stunned those present by granting him the Holy Spirit. Isaac understood that the Holy Spirit could only be obtained through goodwill. He needed to achieve an unprecedented rank, so that even the gods would reckon with him. It would be simply delightful, and he would surpass everyone with the help of the Holy Spirit, after which he would stuff the asshole. The eldest son asked in horror what kind of Holy Spirit this was, that it was too much. It was given to those who brought glory to the name of their house, and this child had done nothing for them yet. Even if he was able to melt the metal, it is just a vulgar symbol of the Pope's hostile intentions. Don't they think it's no coincidence that they put it so simply? When they sent this so-called gift, his father informed him that he had, in fact, done so. Heaven dared to insult them in their own home, but he brought them back safe and sound, and now he is protecting them. What has he done but humiliate his nephew, and now he intends to keep him? Even animals protect their family and home, and Joshua stands on the principle of protecting the weak. The little child, whom they must cherish and nurture, helps them restore their honor. Is this not an example of honoring the name of Joshua? Next, the patriarch asked everyone from the main house to gather. He personally intends to give Isaac his blessing. A few days later, Relai asked his father what he meant by saying he would not just give it to him. Eli said how could he not understand that if they put him in fire or water to extract the Demon King's particle, he would suffer. The anti-demonic properties of the temple's fire and water were too strong for him to master the exorcism rituals. His son said that if that was the case, Isaac would not rise above the rank of 5th grade priest, and his father confirmed this, saying that he would remain at the 4th grade forever. He intends to give Isaac a choice between fire and water, as well as the Holy Spirit, which will be more than enough to test this. Goel was pleased with this, thinking that he knew he would not give the Holy Spirit to the little one just like that. The old man approached the baby and asked him to choose. Relai knew what was inside these balls and mentally asked his tongue to choose the white ball. A little time passed, and the hero reached for the red ball and began to examine it. The older brother then told the younger one not to be too upset. Because the 4th rank was also not bad, they suddenly saw something strange. The red ball in the child's hand immediately fell apart, and a large flame burst out of it. This greatly surprised those present, especially when they looked closer. It turned out that a Holy Spirit had appeared inside the ball. The eldest son asked his father what was happening and why the Holy Spirit was in this ball, and the man asked him not to make a fuss. After all, he had not told anyone that there would be only one Holy Spirit. Joshua's home was in the water, but the child who created a flame so powerful that it melted his father's gold was amazing. He, in turn, hid the trap, but the boy made the right choice. The patriarch did not even expect this. The Holy Spirit was apparently beside herself with anger and asked Elijah if he had completely lost his mind. How dare he summon her royal title into the human world? It seemed as if she was about to attack, so the elders decided to use a protective spell. Goel wondered if the patriarch had summoned the royal rank, probably wanting to burn all their lands. The man said that it wasn't him at all, but the kid who did it. This brat and this place had every chance of becoming his grave. Isaac wondered how he had only used a drop of holy power to summon the middle rank, and it was unclear how the royal rank had appeared. I wonder what he would have summoned if he had really put his mind to it. Suddenly he saw that this Holy Spirit was using anti-demonic flames. The whisper told the master that this was a flame that transformed mana into coiled power. This could greatly help the master in the future. The hero understood that this was true. But now there was a problem. How to make this spirit obey because it was running wild. In addition, spirits of royal rank are connected to the heavens, and he cannot yet get too close to these cursed gods. At that moment, the elder begged the patriarch to send this spirit back. He was crazy, and even the gods had rejected him. Eli said that if he were condemned for the color of his hair, he would also sever his ties with the blessings. The Holy Spirit heard the elder and ordered him to be quiet. Then she asked Eli what he was thinking when he summoned her to the ritual of submission, and he replied that it was not he who had summoned her. And while the girl continued to scream, the old man pointed to the baby. The fiery spirit again declared that he had lost his mind, sacrificing the baby in order to summon her. Even if his house was falling apart, what he had done to the newborn was too incomprehensible. It was terrible what was happening to this baby. Isaac, in turn, thought that this spirit was very powerful and hostile to the gods, so he clearly had to take it and use it as a filter for his own mana. The spirit then said that he would take a look at everything himself, and if this child was really the one who had summoned him through the ritual, he would withstand the attack. Soon a fiery flame enveloped the place where the baby was. And when the flames dissipated, everyone was surprised that the boy was completely unharmed. Eli asked the spirit if he was sure that this boy had indeed summoned him here. Let him choose to make a contract with this child, or refuse and accept punishment. The Holy Spirit asked what punishment there could be. Did he really think that a spirit of his rank would care about such things? So he might as well burn Joshua's house down and enjoy his freedom. Let Eli see how all his lands speak. And while he was speaking, to everyone's surprise, Isaac simply swallowed him. Everyone rushed to him, saying that he couldn't just eat him like that. The spirit shouted that they were all crazy, that it was unclear how they were going to take care of this baby. Let them just wait, he would retreat now, but then they would all pay. The hero sensed that teleportation was about to occur. The fire spirit had already tried to use it and was saying goodbye to everyone. But in the end, nothing worked out, and everything remained in its place. He was surprised, not understanding why he couldn't use teleportation. But it turned out that dark mana was holding him back. Eli said that if he was talking about it, the boy had swallowed the Demon King's thumb. Isaac thought that all these spirits were the purest beings in the entire faction of saints. They literally embodied this energy and were weak to dark mana. The spirit felt weak and begged to stop the boy, but no one wanted to help. The patriarch noticed that the Skeleton King's power was too strong for them to approach, and the spirit reported that they would all go mad and attack at the mere mention of the Demon King. Approaching the boy, Eli said that if the spirit stayed with his grandson and purified all the Skeleton King's dark mana, he would send him back. The fire spirit, of course, did not like this, and said that he hated everyone, and if they did not belong to the Holy Family, he would make cutlets out of them. But it had come to this. He was using this spawn to destroy the cursed one. While the boy was trying to eat him, the spirit shouted for them to leave him alone with the child. That would be more than enough time to deal with it. After that, the patriarch ordered the gates of the eastern castle to be opened, and the child and the spirit to be taken away, not allowing anyone to leave until the ritual was complete. His sons tried to say something to him, but he covered their mouths. He announced that he no longer wished to hear anything. Isaac was glad that the eastern castle was located next to the annex where the mana cores were stored. After a while, new explosions appeared, and it was the mana of the Skeleton King. The servants discussed that Lord Isaac was cursed and was no longer a contender. An employee reported that even yesterday, 4 servants who came to check on him fled in terror. They said that he looked like a balding old man right now. But isn't he a monster without skin or a skeleton? Now that the girl thinks about it, he is there with the Holy Spirit. And all this has been going on for about 10 years. As usual, the maid ran away from the estate in horror, and the main character's assistant arrived. She informed him that she had arrived and asked if he was all right. The curse of the Skeleton King must be so strong that he is still small. Isaac himself wondered what she was talking about. He deliberately lagged behind with the baby. Babies absorb energy much better than anyone else. There is a level that can only be reached while a person is still a baby. The fire spirit was also in this room and said that his body hurt a lot. His name was Lord Shalak. The girl asked if he had rested well, and he replied that he would purify this damn child no matter what. Yesterday he almost managed to finish, but unfortunately nothing worked out, so he was going to do it today. This scoundrel was simply a monster. It was unclear how many particles of the Skeleton King he had eaten, and why, even after 10 years, he still had so much mana, and when he woke up, there was even more. The hero himself knew that it was because he had been absorbing mana from the mana cores in the annex for 10 years. Whisper said that it was amazing. He thought it would take at least 40 years, but he did it in 10. The gentleman noticed that, being so, he finished collecting mana. He couldn't study well because he had to study on his own, but now he is able to use this 6th rank spell. Then his assistant approached him and said that everything was fine, and that his father was also being mobilized. They were going to execute all of the Skeleton King's servants who had threatened the Empire, 14 familiars in total. Very soon they would be able to extract the last mana from the Skeleton King, so he shouldn't worry. The hero was terrified, wondering if they knew how many things they needed to get from them. What other murders? These are damned swindlers, and he needs to do something about them as soon as possible. Suddenly, the boy heard Goel praising his son for not only being a good student, but also for being the youngest ordained priest. The man heard that even the princess would be at his ordination to accompany her, which was a great honor. Shuri remarked that it was nothing. He was his father's son, after all. Goel proudly said that it was true. His son had indeed grown up to be a good man, and he had everything thanks to him. Suddenly, in the blink of an eye, his son disappeared somewhere. Naturally, it was the main character who did it, and the guy who had just been on the street found himself in his room. Isaac turned to this guy and asked if he wanted to die. Couldn't he stop spewing lies? He thought he could get any job just because he got into the academy. He was only able to achieve all this because the boy trained him. Shuri said that he also tried hard. Does he really think it's easy to get a holy rank and be the best in the class? Isaac said that he couldn't have done it on his own. He wondered if he should start preparing for this. Most holy spells are only available after initiation. Soon he came down and said that the boy would help him now. At first, he didn't want to, but when he saw the angry look, he asked how he could help. Isaac told him to give him all the money he had, the contest, and everything Goel had given him. His interlocutor understood that this kid was simply a demon. Soon, the hero asked what was going on with the murder of the Skeleton King's servants. Shuri reported that after the incident with the relic repository, they no longer obeyed orders and seemed to be waiting for their deaths, so they needed to be executed. The hero noted that there was nothing to be done, and that it had to be done before the end of the year, but his interlocutor did not understand what he was talking about. Isaac said he was going to become a priest. Shuri smiled and said that he wasn't even in the academy, so it was unclear how he was going to do that. But when he was hit on the head, he calmed down a little and said that there is actually a recommendation system, and some academy professors are also here. He could be recommended by letter if he passed the test, but he needed to do something to prove his character. A letter of recommendation can only be written if he does something big, such as saving someone's life, but it will be difficult to find someone to save. Suddenly, Isaac asked if the princess would be at his initiation, and his interlocutor said that she would. The hero noted that the princess held a very high position in society. A little time passed, and Eli sent away the people who had come, saying that Isaac would not be going to the capital. They tried to change his mind, saying that he needed to come to the festival, as all the candidates would be there. While all the other candidates had made themselves famous over the past 10 years, Isaac had not shown himself to the world. Therefore, the people who came wanted to see him there. This day is celebrated on the princess's birthday, so even his father will be there. He will personally award the title of hero to all those who are dedicated. The patriarch knew that receiving the title of hero improves a person's strength, and that would be good. But he said that Isaac was not yet mature enough, and they pointed out to him that maturity was not an obstacle to talent. The old man realized that these people would not leave him alone, so he agreed to their proposal after all. However, he noted that they would all be held accountable for their words.